But often what happens, like, I reckon every single chat we've done, like, once you get carried away with the conversation, like, you're almost ranting for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then you go, wait, what was the question again?
Oh, that sums us up completely. I said to myself before this,
Yeah, yeah,
I
genuinely.
would stay on topic, which is my biggest challenge. So don't go drifting off into the ether and then talk about some random shit, and then like Paul Stubbs is
Oh,
trying to chop this up and put it out, and he's like, mate, you've given me like 5 minutes, but it's scattered over 2 hours of crap. Like,
yeah. I mean, having said that, like, I kind of like the tangents though, like, and the fact that, I mean, the first time we did one of these, it was like, let's just see where the conversation takes us. It started off by saying, "Oh, fast bowling, huh? What do you talk about with fast bowling?" And it was, but that's it, I kind of like that, you might start something which opens up a train of thought, which leads into something else, and then it's kind of cool. I kind of DM from someone, was replying to one of the Instagram stories I set up. And he was sort of saying like it'd be really cool if there was like a Facebook or a Discord group so that people could sort of discuss fast bowling. I sat back kind of thinking, there's only a few people I really want to discuss fast bowling with, like,
yeah,
and then I'll kind of go and chat with them and then we'll chat away for hours. But having a Facebook group or a Discord group or something like that will just end up being me giving away free information or like me kind of somehow consulting or coaching for free, which, if I can't put food on the table, then what's the point? Mm.
yeah. I think it's good to share some knowledge, absolutely, but in terms of the finer details, as you probably know better than anyone out there, that there's so much context that
Mm.
does not get disclosed or cannot be disclosed on social media, simply
Mm.
due to the way we post. And you're the best at it out of
Yeah,
everybody at mentioning the context. But
I know.
I think I think you have to do videos and that sort of stuff rather than just a simple text thing
Mm.
like I normally do. Um, so I find myself now not posting as much, mainly because there is just so much context in and around um, the bowl you have in front of you. It's not that I don't want to share information because I
Mm.
do, but there's only so many times you can say the same thing as well. There's just um,
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like you're oversimplifying or you're telling some lies a little bit because you're saying, well, this is true for most people, but to have a straight front leg and all that
Mm.
sort of stuff. But there's always going to be people who come out and will say, but you don't need to have a straight front leg to bowl quick. It's like, yes, but if you look back about 10 posts ago, I
It's such
actually
a
talked
useless
about that.
conversation starter.
Yeah, it is. It's really, I find it a
Yeah.
little bit frustrating, but that's just the way it is. But I will say though,
Yeah.
I feel that education in fast bowling's improved dramatically. I mean, going back 10 years ago
Mm.
when there just didn't seem to be
Yeah,
a
you're
lot of
welcome.
knowledge about fast bowling. It was, oh
Yeah.
mate, it was just unbearable listening to some crap that was going out there at the time. And but
Mm.
it's gotten much better today. And I'm pretty surprised to see what people are now doing, and it's good. Thankfully, education's starting to make an
Yeah, it
impact.
is. And I think that it's
Yeah.
coming
So
full circle,
yeah.
you're getting those kind of links, and that's brilliant, like chatting with you here. I mean, I've always enjoyed the stuff that we've sort of talked about and how you can link that into like a practical coaching outcome. And then out of that practical coaching
Mm,
outcome, you might get some sort of content to share with the world, and then you attempt to communicate that in a way that they can sort of absorb it, as opposed to, leaving them with more questions and more confusion. I mean, I guess more questions is fine as long as it's like you've answered some, and then from that they've got more. But
yeah.
I definitely understand what you mean by like almost like losing interest in posting or almost like wondering what to post about. Because I sat there kind of thinking like I have simplified fastball into such a thing. Like how do I post this or how do I kind of say this? But I think
Yeah.
I was enjoying developing some of the back end stuff. Um, like some of the stuff spoken to you about with the Google Sheets and the full track
Mm.
stuff, and hopefully refining the coaching method, giving it some more value. Um,
People
but I don't know.
people
For
do
now, I'm
invest,
only here for a short time longer.
Yeah, people do invest good money to, for our time and expertise. And I
Mm,
feel it's really important we provide a top end service for those people, and that they
yeah,
can't just simply find the answers on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. Um,
yeah,
because then why come to us? I think that's the whole
yeah.
thing, right? I think we need to keep it simple enough on social media so people get an insight into what we do, and then as they come into our
Mm,
sessions, then they go, "Oh wow, okay, now I see how this is contextualized,
yeah.
tailored, etc., etc." So,
You know what I
yeah,
found with the
yeah,
I can sort of hear myself in the reverb there on your side, just a tiny bit. But I was going to say, what I found with, say, doing those masterclass videos, I I sort of thought that, here I am recording my own sessions, literally sharing as many coaching thoughts, probably too many coaching thoughts, as I can. Essentially, like you might say, giving the key to the castle. There's all the secrets. There's all the knowledge. Like you can literally see how I'm filtering it. And you might sort of sit back and think like, oh, I'm giving everything away now. Who's going to need my coaching? But when I was coaching, say, the guys from Camp Home, well, what I did find was, yeah, it helped some people and they took certain things away and got better. But for others, they kind of thought back and said, oh, I want you to do that to me. And so, in a weird way, it was kind of wonderful marketing because they thought, oh, so that's what a session's like with Stubbzy. I'd better, invest. And it kind of worked out quite nice. And so, it almost, if I ever do run, say, that group session I was posting about or do a workshop, I'd want to pay someone to film it so I could end up clipping it in some little mini clips, hopefully getting a bit of hype and putting it up some content. And then I could take that with me around the world if it's a cool group session slash workshop. Happy days.
yeah. I 100% agree that it's important to show the world what you do. And hey, when I had
Mm.
COVID, I was literally lying on the couch watching your masterclasses and thinking, wow, it's great to hear Stubbs' insights here. Um, and mate,
Oh.
it was really good to watch. Um, good to think, good to see what was going through inside your mind. Your self analysis of bowling and what you think you're actually doing,
Mm.
and then actually having a look to see if that was what you were actually doing. That you got that
Yeah.
yeah like that proprioception that you'll have your own idea of what you think you
Mm.
might be doing, but is it actually happening? And is it actually a problem
Yeah.
per se? It was
Mm.
fascinating to listen in on the insights. Now, um, yeah, I mean, I think people will look at that and think maybe two things there and think, wow, what level of information this is amazing. I mean, I don't think some people realize how lucky they are to see what you're actually willing to share in a live session. Quite
Mm.
quite amazing. And
Mm.
then secondly, some people might think the opposite and go, "Oh man, that's just so much. What do I do?" And then, but either way, people come to you because they go, "Well, look, it's obviously too much for me to think about." Um, and this is all automated in your
Mm.
head. You know exactly what you're feeling, and you're in tune with your body when you bowl. Some people don't have that,
Mm.
and they want to find out a bit more about it. But I think importantly, they're not going to leave your sessions or my sessions thinking too much about the bowling. I don't think they're going to be overthinking it to the point where it'd be detrimental. I think
Yeah.
what 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 we've
Mm.
learnt over a long period of time, and I think our sessions early days were would speak truths to this. Where you could overdo it.
Educational.
Yeah, the educational, but you can really overdo it and and overthink
Yeah.
it. And yeah,
Mm.
geez, mate, it's so different now, compared to where we started. The
Mm.
fast bowling coaching
Mm.
landscape it's so different. I mean, I tell people about what we used to do, and I tell people how I never used to have a radar gun and everything else. And
Yeah.
just where I first started, and I used to watch a bowler bowl and say, "Oh, that looked quick, mate," or "That looked a bit slower," or "That's about the same."
Mm.
I just think, wow, how primitive. I
Mm.
do think, geez, and we've come a long way in what we do now as coaches. Um, and yeah, there's no excuses. You can always get better. And
Mm.
thanks to conversation with you and other people, or listening to conversations you've had with other people, there's always scope to
Mm.
improve your own practice. But you've got to be willing, you've got to be
Yeah.
open enough to want to do it in the first place. And that's a sign of a great coach, I feel, is
Yeah.
someone
One
who's
of the things
looking
I
to evolve. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say one of the things. I mean, you touched on something that probably both of us have probably started to do with our coaching and moving, obviously away from overloading the technical side, but really coaching a bit more based on experience and field. And I wanted to show you something that I've sort of put together for say the online guys, but also I guess for like all my clients in general, because I started thinking like obviously the experience is almost the be all and end all. What you feel at the top of your run, if you can better define what feels good and better define what feels bad, then right there is your two, I guess, bowling frame of minds that if you can identify what's not working and what's feeling bad, what's missing from what's feeling good, that gives you a nice clear path back to it. And I'll share my screen and I want to show you something that I put together uh, for the online guys. I wrote them this, wait. So this is their online journal. But essentially what I did was like I gave them an online fast bowling journal where first off in the console they can define what their best bowling experience is, what their worst bowling experience is, and then we can sort of start to work on these definitions, you might say. And then, so this bowler here has gone through and banked quite a few sessions and he's got plenty of feedback here that I can have a look through. And then from this, it kind of gives me an idea of what's running through his mind. You know how we want them to kind of come up with their own definitions or their own way of understanding what they're doing. This was kind of a cool way that I thought it's an online journal. I really want to make an in-person one, and this was sort of a way that I could sort of trial it and see what works. And yeah, it was a cool little thing that seems to be giving some value back where, now I can sort of gauge like where their thoughts are, how well they can define what their best bowling is, that at the top of their mark, they're just so much clearer on like what it takes to bowl their best. But also when they're not bowling their best, these are sort of things that often start to happen, and you know that you don't want to go too investigative into what's not working because that just takes you like that starts knocking over the dominoes. But now that you've defined what's really working for yourself and you can find out what's missing, there you go, and sort of happy days. And I find it's really put the focus on their experience on how it's feeling. It's given them a nice, clear, intentional focus, and it sort of cleared up a lot of the overthinking, cleared up the overly analytical, and I found it's been a cool development, and you might say, my coaching method, especially how I communicate too. So
Yeah, I like it, Stubbsy. The benefit of that is for them to be in touch with the way they're doing it rather than be relying on somebody else completely, to give that information around what
mm,
they think they're doing well and maybe not so well. Um,
mm,
I do worry though for some people who maybe don't have that intuition, don't really have that feel, don't really know what to be knowing, like they don't have the knowledge, base knowledge to work off, or
mm,
and so on. I mean, I have asked some bowlers, especially younger kids. I'm talking around about 10 to 13 years
mm.
old. Well, what does that feel like, mate? And the response typically comes back as something like, I don't know.
Yeah,
um, it,
yeah,
yeah, but maybe a little bit
yeah,
weird, but they're not quite connected with
mm,
that. So maybe it works better with older
yeah.
bowlers who've been bowling for longer. I think a secondary
I
comment to
found it's
this
more
is,
important to just start the conversation.
yeah, I think it's good. I think there's a huge benefit in having a performance journal. Um, so I encourage bowlers to keep a diary, keep a training log, and start simple and just write
Mm,
down what it is that
yeah,
you did today in the session, outcomes, what worked well,
mm,
what didn't, and uh, when they are going through a tough patch in their performance, sometimes they might be able to backtrack through their training diary and identify periods where things are working really well for them,
mm,
and to go back to
yeah,
doing those particular things at training, or it might be just something that the eating patterns or
yeah,
sleeping patterns or whatever it could be. It can be as comprehensive as you
mm,
like, but I often find it's best with any bowler is to start really simple and small, with any diary or
Mm.
anything, just to help with the compliance. And then I wanted to touch on something else secondary to this,
Yeah.
which is something I've recently started thinking about doing in my coaching practice, and that is, not just using some sort of qualitative, um, capture of, biomechanics and, you know,
Mm.
getting them to tell us what they think they're doing really well, or vice versa,
Mm.
but actually, filming, probably 12 to 18 balls or maybe 24 balls, getting maybe, let's just say, side on footage, every ball. And then what you can do, you can start to quantitatively analyze, through statistics programs like SPSS, which is what we use in research, for example, to identify what are
Mm.
the technique factors that statistically link or associate or correlate with ball speed for that bowler. So what we can do
Mm.
is track all their ball speeds every ball, track their knee angles every ball, knee angle at front foot contact, at ball release, look at calculating stride length. We can do all this two dimensionally, and there's going to be some error with doing the measurements, but we can capture all this information. Heck, we can even profile entry speed into the crease, last 5 meters. We don't need fancy gear to do that. We can just
Mm.
I've been doing it now just by looking at, making a mark at 5 meters out from the front line, and now just capturing the average speed
Right.
from that point. And you just put all this information in, and then all of a sudden you can start linking up and finding out how that actual bowler is bowling faster statistically. So you can compare the two methods, and that's
Mm.
what mixed methods research
Brilliant.
is, which is really really clever. So if the bowler might be saying, "Well, look, I actually think my front leg isn't really all that important for me. I seem to generate a lot of speed mainly from my run up." And the data might be able to say a very similar thing, or it might not. I
Mm.
mean, and it's good for conversation anyway. But yeah, I think people want data. They
Mm.
want, like, with, full track, AI, for example.
I want to show you something about data in a second.
Yeah, I think people, as we get into this, like, just more and more data is being collected, but I think people they put a lot of trust in the data. And I found that as soon as I moved to having a radar gun
Mm.
and a profiling system and all sorts of stuff, that there's 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 a greater
Mm.
perceived value, for what you can give the player and the coach, etc. So yeah, I think there's merit
Mm.
to qualitative, and there's not everything can be counted, right? So we do need to talk and work through
Mm.
those feelings and all that sort of stuff. It's really hard to capture feelings statistically. Sorry. Um,
Mm.
so how do you can't
Yeah.
capture that? I mean, so you have to talk and have to find some way of expressing that. So I think the two go really well together, the qualitative and the quantitative. And I think it's good. It'd be a good idea in our practice to try
Mm.
and merge the two together a bit more. Um, yes, please show me full track, mate.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, well, I was going to show you what I was using with it because I mean, I had a few people ask me, is full track useful or is it just kind of fancy software? And like it all comes down to how you use it. If you just set it up, I mean, it does record every ball. So if you wanted to look back through, it can be somewhat worthwhile in picking out certain balls and maybe from an umpire's view, analyzing. It's also useful for batsmen because, with a sidearm or if someone's bowling, like it records all their shots too. So that's a little side
Mm,
benefit. But what I've sort of done with it, I'll show you a ball so you can like sort of see how it sort of works. Um, this was like me just kind of mucking around. Oh, I was going through a skills challenge, so that was a half decent ball. Then I was talking through a cue, and then I bowled one of my fastest balls, which was I think that was 111. But like because they've got the ball tracking there, like you can see that
mm,
this right.
yep.
I've then got a I've got this that I've sort of kitted out. Let me zoom in for you. This is the second phase of it because like I just keep further developing it, further developing it, further developing it. But like here's all the metrics. That goes to show you how many balls you're bowling in this certain in this challenge, which is somewhat useful. Uh, that's the skills challenge. that's not meant to be like that, but I might have to double check a couple of things. But like, there's the score, so you get a score out of 0, 1, 2, 2 if you hit line and length and say, your ideal ball. Um, 1 if you miss line or miss length, and it's, you can sort of argue that it's still a decent ball. And 0 if it's just, it's not there, which kind of makes it either a wide or a four ball, depending on, white ball,
Mm.
red ball. But I also got my speeds because I could set the stalker up there as well, which was great. So I thought, okay, cool. So this is just me going through a skills challenge. Again, I have to change these back, but what I had down the bottom was all these kind of metrics to go. Well, overall, my score was 22 out of 54, so my execution percentage was 41%. Max speed was 111, average speed was 107. And I've gone a bit further and looked at, well, what was my average speed for the ball that I got right? Average speed for the balls that I got wrong. This one's sort of pretty similar. Then I can sort of say how many times did I score a 2, 1. But what I like is I could code the
Yep.
like where I missed. I bowled more wides than I bowled four balls, so I'm missing down legs, which you can see here. I'm hitting line a lot more than I'm hitting length, so I can sort of link that back into some technique stuff and say, I reckon what's happening with me is, probably bowling a bit more left to right,
Mm.
etc., not coming over myself. This is like the dashboard, so it's got a bunch of cool stuff here which shows the stuff, but I haven't kitted this part out yet. But essentially, like I can differentiate between all the craft and all the skills. So essentially, like I can tell you, what's your percentage of bowling a stock ball to a right-hander versus to a left-hander. This kind of all fills out with a bunch of data that I can then sort of tell you like where your skills are missing based on like your execution percentage differentiated between certain balls. You can sort of compare the last session accuracy and stuff like that. Essentially, I thought like now that I can say use full track, which records every ball, I can see where the ball goes. I can give a pretty clear indication on like where that ball's going. Like, did you nail your Yorker? Did you nail your bouncer? Did you nail your stock ball? If it can set up the stalker as well. I mean, full track will eventually have speed too, and it's getting closer based on like what they've shared with me privately. Um, but there's just all this stuff that I can now pull out some data and go, there's some objective stats. I mean, there is a bit of subjection in there because I'm coding it, but it's as objective as you could probably get. And I can now spit out to you like where you're missing, where you're not missing, where you've bowled more, where you've bowled less, your average speed to a left-hander is lower than a right-hander, etc., etc. And I thought if I could link this into an app and then also link in, say, what you were talking about, right, with the technique side, and then we can link into mental skill stuff and the physical side, like, mate, how brilliant would that be? So that's my dream, you might say, which is why I sort of had some fun continuously trying to develop these sheets because, if I think big picture, that's where I can sort of see it go. And then who knows, one day, like, it could just spit you out a skills challenge. On the sheets, obviously, you have to
Mm.
leave the skills challenge as it's written, but in an app, you could just write in, give me a generic skills challenge. Away you go. A coach could use it and then mark it down with each of their athletes. But yeah, that was sort of what
Yeah.
I'd looked at doing recently about putting some data together for,
Great, great
skills.
initiative, Stubbsy.
Mm,
I really like your initiative, and I like your thinking around that. And um, um, there's two things that come to mind. I think having some sort of system like that it works really well with small group of bowlers at one time.
mm,
Might be one on one or just a couple of bowls where you can, as a coach, sit back and determine the accuracy score.
yeah.
I think when en masse, when you've got a large group of players, I think a more automated system is called for. And in terms of
Mm,
scoring, and there are some ways out. There's some things you can do out there on that topic. I guess the first one is um, maybe using a grid-based vertical target sheet system that Cricket Australia
yeah.
has used for a
Could do
number of
that.
years as part of their system. Now that takes a little bit of setup.
Mm,
That would mean you might need a few of those for your nets, but um,
mm,
that you could actually have certain parts where it's got your actual scores. And they don't use a scoring system of 0, 1, or 2 like you have here, but they use a scoring system out of 100, and it's just a
mm,
point system. And you've seen my system that I used in research, which is
mm.
um, very laboursome though. They really I had to come back and analyse the radial error, which is the distance away from the target on the sheet. Um,
That's
but
going
then
to
I could
confuse a lot of
also,
people.
yeah, yeah. So which is just the intended target on a sheet might have been top of off.
Yeah.
Where the balls strike on the sheet, and then you have to
Mm,
simply measure the distance between the two, which is using software like Dartfish or whatever.
yeah.
That's pretty cumbersome. But I was doing that plus getting the X and Y coordinates, and then um, of that ball strike, which meant that when I got the X and Y, I could actually work out things like um, centroid error, which I mean, another term for consistency, but you can think about
Mm.
where all the bias is. So if I said to you,
Yeah.
Stubbsy, can you hit the top of off stump for right hander? And all of a sudden I'm noticing there's a pattern where there's a cluster of
Yeah.
deliveries. There's all about 1 to 2 feet outside off, up a little bit higher.
Mm.
Then also that gives me some good information to know, well, that's just whereabouts
It's
you
much more
seem to be
specific than
hitting.
say, me just going offside, leg side, too full, too short. I'm just, marking it in a nice circle. But I mean, that'd be
Can
something super
can
cool to.
yeah, can full track do like a cluster of balls at once rather than looking at one ball at a time?
They have talked about doing that. Like, one of the things they mentioned was they want to be able to put like least points together. Be able to,
Mm,
select two balls and then compare them side to side. So I know that's in their plans. I mean,
yeah, it'd be good to have,
mm,
Hawkeye, like you just do all 6 balls in one over and have the
they looked at
trajectories of
that
all
for the,
six.
what's
Yeah,
it called, the beehive or something.
yeah,
But maybe that's a bit different to say all six. I think that will be something they'll look at just because, I think their idea was to have, Hawkeye in your pocket, which I think is awesome.
yeah. Make it really accessible for people. And yeah, if you could get the cluster of all 6 balls, for example, in an over with their speed profile on each one, then all of a sudden, I mean, it sells itself basically.
Yeah,
It takes
it
a lot of
does.
work out from you as coach. You have to think as coach. For me, as soon as I started automating the speed gun and that having a speed
Mm.
sign set up, it meant that I wasn't behind the gun all the time, like reading out a
Yeah, it's a good
bloody
point.
speed. Like I could
It's a
then
good
move
one.
around,
Yeah.
yeah, and just coach. Like I want to coach. I don't want to be stuck behind a
Mm.
gun or stuck behind an iPad. So finding like this with the new iPad I have now and
Mm.
the software I have on that, I haven't trialed this just yet, but there's a voice record function. So it apparently will pick up my voice when I say start or something, rather than me have to stand behind the
Okay.
iPad and do that. Now I know you can get some triggers as well, so like you can Bluetooth to your iPad with a trigger,
Mm.
and then if you hit the button, basically that starts the record process. So that I'm not stuck behind an iPad, trying
Mm.
to hit start and stop. Rather, I can be roaming
Yeah.
around coaching, and that's where people will see a lot of value as well. So it's a tricky one, but I always think, you know, um, if you're doing big sessions, then you've got to find ways to make things more automated in the background because you just can't be across
Yeah.
everything.
Well, I'll run you through what I had the idea with those fastball and group sessions. I mean, first off, I started thinking I've always thought about doing something like this, just for the main thing about affordability. And I've had enough guys that I've coached, one on one, and I reckon like I'm a good enough coach now that I could give a bunch of people the same value, provided they're all above a certain level, which would just sort of mean like, you might need two or three one-on-one sessions, and then you'll fit into that. But I'm just talking hypothetically here because I haven't started
Mm,
it yet. But essentially, I thought like I could set up full track in all three nets. So it's recording each ball. I'll get the umpire's view. It's quite useful. If it's a skill-based type challenge, so I've got my skill constraints in there. That's pretty straightforward to set up. And they can just go through and do it. Full track will record each ball. The other nets are the technique net. Again, I've had the technical constraints set up in there, plus full track. Maybe I've got my stalker set up for that. When full track records the ball, it also records the speed on the gun. Obviously, I might
mm,
have to get the gun fixed so that the pad shows it a little bit clearer than that. And
yeah.
then say the last net, either I could, set up full track again and do like a scenario. So there might be a batsman in there. Now what you practiced in the skill net, you're going to now execute in a scenario. And I thought I could almost step back with all this running, be able to give people, feedback. One net might be a speed type net. And I thought like I could pretty comfortably have at least three people per net. So that's nine people over a three lane kind of thing. Maybe even one more might be doing something outside, some med ball work, some weighted ball stuff or some rehab stuff. Because mate, I mean, I spent most of my time as an S&C coach. Like I can do multiple things at once. And I just thought, wow, this would be affordable. It'd almost be like a mini workshop every week, and it would probably be one of the most high quality type fast bowling sessions that you could probably run. I sat back and thought, why the fuck have I not done this yet? So I
Well, I can
started
tell you it
posting on.
works. If you want some feedback on that, because I've run these a few
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
So about
Is that with grammar?
down at Central Highlands in Ballarat, so the Central Highlands cricket
Okay.
region, back in 2011, I started doing some fast
Mm,
bowling consultancy there under the regional manager called Campbell Waring at the time. And I was just coming on board to do some introductory sort of fast bowling stuff
mm,
for the region, which is really, really cool with the kids.
mm,
And I was just learning what they were doing first because I was just starting out myself. And
mm,
then what I found really fascinating was they do look. There was a sort of batch of 5 sessions, one session a week. The first 2 sessions were around fitness, which I took, and then
mm,
third session they had a gentleman, Paul Montgomery from Cricket Victoria, come out and do all the filming and do the individual analysis of the bowlers. So I'll just talk you through
mm,
this because it was quite interesting. So basically, do very similar stuff to what we did. They, he'd use a program called Silicon Coach on the laptop and take the
mm,
bowler through the good parts and the areas that they could do with improvement, for example, in their bowling action. But they'd also get the other bowlers listening in, and it would plug that into the bigger sort of TV. So a big projector system in the stadium. They had a dedicated room for that sort of stuff, which is really cool. So we're all like just sitting in, having something to eat, but watching, going through each bowler's
mm.
stuff. Everyone was learning heaps, obviously about their own technique, but we've
Yeah,
seen
amazing.
trends in these bowlers, right? So what we ended up doing was we came up with just really one simple A4 sheet landscape, just a table of key technical traits. You think about
Mm,
things like, let's say we identified run up was an area like a lot of kids have a
mm,
snake and they run up, for example, they don't run in a straight line. So we made that a category, and then we put the bowlers' names under that list. All right, and then we had
mm,
other categories like compact gather, or making sure the ball's in line with the shoulder, something like that. Could be one with the jump that they're just not jumping straight, and then some there's a number of characteristics here that was simple, and then I didn't know what the whole point of that was at the time, and then come fourth session, which is the remediation sessions. They had 2 sessions left to
mm,
do remediation, but we did them in a group like manner where we had 3 to 4 lanes set up on a basketball court, and one was dedicated to things like the run up and making sure that the
mm.
bowls are running in on a channel, for example.
Yeah, love that.
Second one was dedicated towards making sure they weren't falling over to the side. So there was a all hamper Milo stumps set up
Mm.
side to side, really tall to stop them from falling over. And yeah, and so just like that. But what it wasn't the mix of things that you're talking about, which was one was technical,
Mm,
one was craft, and so which I think is really cool. I mean, that offers a lot of variety
mm,
to the training, and it really um, magnifies your philosophy around the pillars, the 4 pillars of performance.
mm.
That you're not just hanging your head on
And I
technique
think,
only.
yeah, and I guess, this is sort of your main overview, but because it's semi-private, like it's not group in the sense that like you're all going to do the same things. It's going to be
Yeah,
pretty much tailored individually. Like if you need to spend more time doing technique, then you'll mainly be in the technique then. If you need to spend more time doing skills because your technique feels good, then you'll be in that net. Obviously, the speed net's not going to be speed for the whole session because like I'm not going to get a guy who's just done 6 overs of technique or skill to now jump and let's see how fast your max speed is.
yeah,
So that might then become like an extra sort of technique net. But I do like the way that it could be set up in a sense that it can all be kind of individually tailored to what you guys need, and
yeah.
that's where it might have a bit more value on top of just everyone in the group doing the same thing. And then, some guys get a bit extra, other guys might not get as much. I really do want it to be like you're getting a private session in a group. Yes, and that's the whole semi-private type thing.
Well,
But
you just be mindful though here that people are not necessarily paying time; they're paying for your expertise and knowing or having the trust that you'll know what to do, and you
yeah,
might spend so long, years and
mm,
years and years honing your knowledge and stuff, but then you're able to in 5 seconds determine what a bowler needs to do you know
yeah.
when it took you years to do that. So I just want to make a point that people pay for that.
You know what I,
They
yeah,
they pay for
you know
this
what I laughed
knowledge.
about?
Yeah,
Oh, I had a chuckle. I think you might have told me the golf story, of paying a super expensive coach. He sat there watching four or five swings, gave one little cue for the wrist, and then, they were perfect. And I sat back thinking, my goal as a fast bowling coach is to literally be able to say two things. You might pay me $500 for 2 hours, and then like you might sit back and go, "But you did nothing." Like, obviously I
Yeah.
improved, but like you
You
didn't do
knew you
anything. It's
know where
like
to look.
that's how good I
That's
am.
that's
Exactly.
that's the thing. You know where to look, and you know
Huge.
what to
Yeah.
do. So the thing is,
Yeah.
I've been able to make some, like yourself, been able to make some great adjustments with bowlers,
Mm.
and to have them feeling great in one session when they could have spent
Mm.
a fraction of the price, and let's not forget so much time
Hmm.
wasted, maybe a
Yeah.
year or two with doing some other coaching that just doesn't work, simply because
Mate.
they didn't go to a specialist. Okay, they've just been mucking
And do
around,
you
and time's
sometimes
money,
find,
time's yeah, yeah.
do you sometimes find that, as a coach, like you almost spend time undoing the work of, what they've done on their own without really thinking, or sometimes, the work that, say, another coach might have put into them, obviously
Yeah.
without kind of realizing. But I often find like
Well,
half of my work is just trying to,
I see dangers on Instagram. Like, I mean, I just see, like, I mean, I've had a few people come to me and they said they've read something I've put out or someone else has put out and so on. And I
mm,
always say that, great that you're reading. Well done. I'm glad that you're wanting to
mm,
learn more, but I need you to know that not everything's for you. And it's
yep,
quite important that we understand you and how you go about doing this. And
yeah,
this as a framework, yes, there's your flair. There's
mm,
all sorts of things to talk about here, but please don't get overconsumed because I feel like there's a fair bit of
mm,
confusion around with the actual
yeah,
audience around what do I need to do to bowl quick or accurate or whatever. And no matter how much we look to simplify on social media, that confusion will always persist, to the point where I'd rather just talk to the person in private and do
yeah,
the analysis, do all the work, and that's it. I mean, and that's what people come
yeah,
to us for is
yeah.
because we know where to look and we know what to do and the path of least resistance. What is going to
And we
result
know
in,
when to.
yeah,
I mean, like we know when to match the framework to you as well, and like where you match the framework to you. You often see
mm,
like some people try to fit bowlers into a framework. You've got the Brett Lee factory, which I've had a few guys get churned out of and, sort of struggle or lose performance.
mm,
But being able to match the frameworks into an individual and then put it together in a way that, like, for them, it's how they're going to learn, it's how they're going to understand it, it's how they can think about, improving it. These sort of
yeah.
fancy
That
bells and whistles like the journal where I, mm,
you've hit it. You've made it. Oh, this is you open up a can of worms here. That and I knew you were going to do it at some point. But the the um, the framework is a really interesting conversation. That if you
yeah.
coach a shape only,
Mm.
when I used to
Mm.
coach you, and I used to always say about positions one thing, is what you do with it
Yeah.
is another, and
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yeah.
pretty pretty lay, right? But so true. So there's people who think they've just got to
Hmm.
hit positions, and that's it. You may as well put your front arm up nice and tall and just hope that it's going to work for you because a lot of people don't use it. They might get it up tall, but
You don't use it.
don't use it right.
Yeah.
Just flops down by the side or something. Um,
Hmm.
I actually think the framework works, and I've coached
Mm.
for a long time now using the framework. Those four key things that we found in the research that works. Yes, and we know that not every bowler needs to kill it, kill all four things to be fast. But
Mm.
the framework scientifically and for application of physics and biomechanics, it does make sense. However, a lot of it's around learning how to make the positions work. Similar to what you were
Yeah.
saying about the front leg and the using the front leg to bring the rear leg through. That's what I'm talking
Mm.
about. Not just get your front leg straight.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on, we've got to be better than that, don't we? And just understanding the correct sequence and timing of bowling, which is really what I've done best from the probably last 2 to 3 years. I've really
Mm.
moved away from just looking at a, a photo. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like that's all I do though. Is
Yeah.
on Instagram, all people are seeing is a photo or something, and they're seeing all right, that's the shape, but they're missing the big contextual factor here is how you get
You
into
know
that
what?
shape and how you get out of that
Let's,
shape. What does one segment look to another
yeah,
segment? I mean, it's pretty complex stuff, but basically, I've look, I can't believe I'm admitting this, but we have to watch the fastest bowlers of all time, and we have to study them. We do. We have to
mm,
learn how they actually did it, biomechanically speaking. All right. And we see a lot of similarities with these guys and girls. Girls are bowling fast today as well. But we're seeing a lot of similarities there, technically speaking. And
yeah,
I we cannot neglect that, honestly. And so for me, some of the most noticeable things I've noticed from the bowlers back in the 70s and 80s, maybe before then as well, was the enormously long delivery strides because of the back foot no ball,
inside on.
yeah, and being ultra
You're
side
right.
on or side on, and allowing their body to move through a proper sequence from ground up. Um,
Mm.
and being a side on bowler gives you every,
Ball's a passenger.
yeah, absolutely. Being side on gives you every opportunity to do that. But one thing I do see a lot of bowlers make the mistake, especially side on or semi open, is that they start to this or square up their torso, right? They're trying to get front on really early
Yeah,
before their
too early.
front foot has even landed. So I take bowlers through a
Mm,
really good scientific experiment now, and there's two things on this I want to really touch on because it's quite new to my coaching. Was
mm,
that, well, this one I actually get this from Ian Pont, so credit to Ponty for this one. But he talks about how you can't get any power roller in the air, and 100%. So if you jump up in the
mm,
air and you try to move your body, it's so weak. Um, so he was
mm.
talking about, put your front leg up in the air and then try and turn your trunk, and you realize you barely got any power. So
Yeah,
he's like, stay closed off, basically, and then once you've landed the front foot and you've got all that force coming out of the body, then it's time to turn and get all the power, and that's
yeah,
really good timing of your action. The other thing I've been doing
yeah, and
lately.
that's
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate.
Oh, I was gonna jump. I did a little video series about, the position you want to be in at takeoff. So like when your foot's on the ground during a jump, like your stance phase, that's when you bring your body across, and you'll see some of the best bowlers like at takeoff, their front knee or like their knees driving forward, the pelvis is going straight, and their arms come across.
Yeah.
But then you see like when they're in the air, that's when they start to mistime it. Either they'll bring that body back too early, and so they end up being in a terrible position at back for contact, like you said torso's like open back up. And I remember like seeing this and sort of, I mean, Shoaib Akhtar was one that I saw as well. And I was just looking at like, before you were talking about some of these like key traits. And I was sort of thinking like, I've gone down a similar road, but thinking less about, say, fast bowling technical traits and more about the movement traits that fit into that.
Mm,
Like, if you're not relaxed, then like, because you're not relaxed, for your body to move, the muscles have to first uncontract, relax, so to speak,
mm,
before they can contract again, which takes time. So now you're going to speed things up to factor that in.
mm,
If you can relax, at least now you give yourself access to the ability to time the way that you want.
mm,
And then I looked at, say, running mechanics and thinking like, if you're overstriding in your run up, you're going to start to have the same kind of movement issue when you go through there. If you're butt kicking in your run up, you have the exact same issue sort of start to play out. And I started noticing, you might say, this or I started noticing patterns, and I can improve bowlers' fast bowling techniques if I improve their like, foundational movement mechanics and everything, like you can't run if you can't walk, you can't walk if you can't crawl, I think. But,
yeah, I
some of
understand what
these
you're
sorts of
saying.
things. And then
Yeah.
I found when I take them through you might say the key characteristics that you sort of look to develop, and I'll fit those into the bowl, so to speak. But it becomes so much easier. All of a sudden, they kind of know how to jump forwards. They can get themselves into a position where they can actually use their body.
Mm,
I mean, you talked about the front arm before, and the one thing I hate the most is when people teach a front arm like this. It's like, you see this one.
mm,
It's like you've isolated the front arm away from the body.
mm,
Like the front arm needs to pull the body. So if you're not teaching it that way,
yeah.
then what they'll do is they'll end up like, pulling here, but they haven't cleared their front side. So then they have to kind of side flex and go away. And like that's a really common one because the front arm is something that always gets coached by everyone.
Mm,
Pull the front arm into your side, and then they do it, and they link it into their bowling, and then they're literally just pulling themselves nowhere,
mm,
so that they have to side flex because they haven't pulled that sort of part out of the
mm,
way. But like throwing, you use the front side to power through the other
mm.
side.
That's right.
Like you can use that to help to get more torque.
Yeah.
And that's where you talk about positions. Like if your front legs just, looks nice, but you aren't using it to, power the opposite side
Mm.
through, you're not going to get your power out of it. It might look good, but it's not going to give you much.
So, I love this conversation. As you know, you've delved into technique, and
Have good conversation.
well, here's
The fast bowling conversations, yeah.
oh, mate, it's good stuff. I mean, the thing I've been doing lately in the sessions has been, let's just say I have a bowler who's collapsed the front leg. But I mean,
Mm,
landed somewhat straight and then just sunk into the ground,
yeah,
and then someone, but
yeah.
didn't realize that was an issue, didn't understand the physics behind that,
Mm,
etc. So we do some coaching. We get the straight front leg happening straight away. It's amazing how quick it's happening these days with
yeah,
the technique. And I have to
mm,
give credit to you with your thinking
yeah.
around using the front leg to pull your rear leg through and that sort of stuff. It's a really, really advanced
I've got a
concept.
tangent for that.
Yeah. I'll
I'm going to write it. Oh, should we jump into it now?
yeah, and I'll just finish this part here, and hopefully,
Okay,
I
good.
mean, feel free to take this because it works. What I'm going to add to this, because I've got to
Yeah,
give back, after hearing your beautiful insights into the
yep.
front leg, um, is that I get the bowler to off a few steps, bowl with the ball with the front leg straight, and
Mm,
then bring the rear leg through, no worries. And you see the speed, right? He start getting some baseline speeds,
mm,
and I say, right now, what I want you to do is what you used to do, and I want you to sink into the ground like you did.
right.
So what happens? What happened the other day, right? The bowler
Yeah.
dropped 15K just off the same amount of steps,
Mm,
which literally doing a bit of a walk in, and I said, "How did you feel?" And he said, first thing he said, "I can't believe I've been bowling like this. I feel weak as." And I went, "Wow,
I love
wow."
it.
And so what I've been doing recently has been proving the point by going back to the old technique that was biomechanically,
Yeah.
had some flaws there.
Mm,
And because sometimes when you're coaching and you do the correction, they might say, "Oh yeah, it feels a bit stronger," and all that sort of stuff. And they don't really notice it 100%.
yeah.
But then when you go back to the old stuff, it was really pronounced, and like they go, "Oh my god, what a ugly position." Now, before you
Yeah.
jump in with your thing, I remember reading stuff with Stephen Jones' work a while back, and he talked.
Feed the
He,
floor.
no, he talked about the stumble reflex. So I, at that stage, didn't really know what the
Oh, yeah.
stumble reflex was. Anyway, you'll laugh at this. I asked my daughter to hop off YouTube the other day and just
Mm,
come outside for a sec because wanted to push me in the back. Now
yeah.
I never get her to do this, right? So this is pretty funny. She's like, "What? What are you talking about?" So I actually stood there with my eyes closed, feet standing like just hip width apart. I'm
Yeah.
relaxed as possible, and she gave me a almighty
Mm,
push in the back, and I caught
yeah.
myself on my left leg, my bowling front leg, and I
Mm,
noticed this really relaxed, wobbly type feeling where I stumbled over my front
yeah.
leg, and there was barely any strength of contraction required at all. It was just like a plonk and
Yeah.
and it just flop, everything falls into
Mm,
place. I went, why don't we just do that? So I started drilling this in the sessions where I'd get the bowler to do
mm,
your thought around using the front leg to bring the rear leg through, but I'm now
mm,
getting to do that using a run up. Hands are just by their side, like on their hips or something, and just learning just to throw the leg out there and go
yeah.
plonk, and then just catapult over the top.
Mm,
And oh my god, it just I wish I had
mm.
done that with you about 10 years ago. It would have been amazing. Rather than going, all right, got to get your legs straight, claw, drag. I still
Yeah.
remember all the bloody words we used. Oh my god, as if you're going to keep up with all that.
Yeah.
You got to chase a feeling, so you've got to nail this feeling, and then you've got to keep
Yeah.
repeating that feel, rather than having all these million
Mm,
things in your head. You've got to try and go for a feeling, and that's honestly, you've
yeah.
got to keep hitting that. You've got to give yourself much more chance of making the change.
Mm.
Anyway, please hit me up with what you were going to say on the. I think it was on the front knee stuff, was
Oh,
it?
mate, I was just saying, I mean, I've got a couple of things after that because I love that whole concept of like, I mean, Stefan called it feed the floor, but like, I sort of thought about it as like, if I'm going to coach their best experience and worst, then I have to teach them like what's bad. Like, if you're naturally falling away, bowl as if you're trying to fall away, and all of a sudden, like, they approach it now in a much more healthier kind of like mindset too,
Mm,
because they're then there to
yeah,
learn. So I found that like for the guys that get frustrated, that's really invaluable for them because I'm allowing them to make their own mistakes, but now we're kind of reconceptualizing our approach to it so we can take some learning out of it. But often like you find, so I might have to cue them to go completely the other way. Like I had one guy where his foot was turning all the way out, so I said, don't point your foot straight, point it to fine leg,
yeah.
go the other way, and all of a sudden he gets it
Yep,
right, which I thought was
that does
just
work.
wonderful.
Yeah,
But I mean, yeah, talking about the stumble reflex, like I remember having a look at, like if guys' legs are dangling into back foot contact, like of course they're going to stumble.
mm,
Linking back into what I was talking about, both sides of your body, if you're going to be strong at back foot contact, at the same time as the other leg's up, the other leg has to be down. Otherwise, you have no choice. If both legs are coming down at the same time, you're going to
yeah,
stumble. Like it's just going to happen. So one of the cues I used was like, I want you to try to get your front knee up as high as you can at back foot contact. Because the only way they could do that is if now they're putting some intention into putting the leg down, which then brings, because they're putting the intention into bringing one leg up, it then puts the intention into the other leg down. And linking both sides together, I found that's where a lot of my cues were
yeah.
missing.
You talking about like
Because,
the scissor stuff,
your
aren't
body
you? Like
works,
you're talking about like the left leg, or
yeah,
say for a front, sorry, for a right-handed bowler, the left leg going up into hip flexion, and then the right
mm,
leg has to go into hip
the
extension.
legs in
Right,
extension.
exactly. So is that what termed by
Yeah,
the I've heard Stefan talk about? Is that the crossed extensor reflex, or is that what that refers to? I don't
I
really
think
know, but yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's a Bosch
Oh,
term.
okay, yeah, yeah,
If you try, like I can sort of show you it now. Now, obviously, I don't think you'd use exactly that. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking while thinking, but yeah, at back for contact, you can kind of use that like cross extensor
yeah,
reflex. But if you get the right, like the back for contact leg so stiff that the shin can't
yeah.
drop, well then you're going to end up sort of like
Well, what
tipping
I've
over.
noticed,
So, and I
unfortunately,
often find people that
yeah, what I've noticed, unfortunately, with bowlers who land too stiff and too tall, and that's through coaching, is that unfortunately the delivery
yeah,
stride is nowhere near as long as it should be. So they end up
they do
landing
this.
too
Yeah,
short, and they've got
it's like.
not enough braking force. Yeah,
What if like it's like they're like this, like that.
yeah,
It's like one straight line all the way down
yeah.
here
It's
because they couldn't break the
not
leg.
enough of a platform for my liking. We look at where the 2 feet land. They don't have enough braking force coming through the
Mm,
front leg anymore. There's too much vertical force.
no.
I mean, if you think about the ratio, um, yeah, they're too tall, and so yeah, literally. I mean, not literally. Unfortunately, I had coached a bowler a few years ago who was bowling quite quick at 16, and I was around the thinking then of the back leg you have to be taller and stiffer upon landing, and so but he wasn't. So what he was doing was accessing the back foot landing position. So as he's coming in from the jump, he was just getting in nice and low, ready to hit the ground with a bent back knee.
Yeah.
He wasn't actually landing on the back knee and then sinking. He was actually gliding into the back into the crease. Now I thought that was a problem. So at that time I coached him out of that and I said, no, no, no. I need you to be taller
Right.
on the back foot, on the back leg. So I want you to be
Mm,
stiffer and that sort of stuff. And his pace dropped by probably a good 5 to 10K. And then I was like, it took me a long time to learn and figure out what was going on. Case in point, I had a bowler the other day who bowled 131.6 kilometers per hour, and I was watching him, and he was
mm,
running in really, really fast. He actually got into speeds of 27 kilometers per hour, and about 24k an hour hitting the crease. Okay, so pretty fast. This is like Brett Lee,
you
Mitchell
sh
Johnson sort of run up
yeah,
speeds, really,
seriously.
really fast. Okay, the footage is mind blowing. The bowler accesses the crease with a bent front leg, bent back leg, does not sink,
Mm,
uses it to help him propel forward and get a massive
mm,
stride length. And his stride length I calculated to be about around 1.7 to 1.8 meters. was really, really long, gives a massive plant. And we know from the science, if you can get your front leg out further, generally speaking, you create a
Mm,
larger braking force for you to simply just pivot over the top. Now, um, it
yeah,
is really, really amazing. I think the back landing stiff on the back leg and then sinking's a problem. I feel that's losing energy. But if you land on the back foot with your leg already bent and you're not sinking, you're just using it to help push your center of mass forward more. I don't see
yeah,
that as much of a problem. I actually think that's advantageous. And I watch Brett
no.
Lee now. A great example of someone who did that as well. He didn't land incredibly tall in the back leg. Yeah,
On that, on his on say the back knee, I've often found like the bowlers who can get their shins lower to the ground because they can do that. Like they'll have a longer delivery stride, but they'll also be more upright at the point of front
yeah,
foot contact, which now
correct.
means they've got a greater range of say trunk flexions. All of a sudden, like their ability to leverage each sequence is just
It's
so much
so much
greater.
better.
And this is where I probably have seen a bit of stuff going, well, I need to coach the rear leg. I mean, actually, just off topic, but you mentioned ankle stiffness, and I often find people don't understand what ankle stiffness is. Like, one, it's not like, I guess, the most easy to understand type term, because, like, if you stiffen the ankles, like, well, you still want them
Yeah,
to
I
be able to
wasn't talking
move
specifically
naturally,
about the
right?
ankle.
But people stiffen the knee.
Yeah, I was
No,
talking about
no,
just
this
general
was more
leg
off topic
stiffness.
where people,
Yeah, I was just saying just try and land be a bit more springier on the leg. That was my coaching advice. And I didn't
yeah.
this I have coached the ankle before and try not to let the heel drop it and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you're 100% right, Stubbsy. Yeah.
But like ankle stiffness is not a it's not a coaching like it's not say technical kind of quality. Like it's literally just a structural quality of the ankle that you develop. Like
Yeah, it is.
that's what you develop naturally when you do plies and stuff
It
like
is.
that. Like
And
you don't want to be coming in and having stiff
yeah,
ankles.
and the other comment around that is that if you're leaning so far backward into back foot contact, which might be absolutely fine for some people, but there's no hope in hell that you're able to going to have your landing there's midfoot to forefoot. Your whole weight's on your back leg, and that might be appropriate for some bowlers, but
Hmm.
for most traditional bowlers, it's not, and they'll just simply lose a lot of ground
Hmm.
speed at that point. So all it is getting them
Yeah.
to fix up their landing position, which often comes back to their gather. So I'm seeing so many bowlers who still like to go really out well in
Yeah,
front
with jump.
of their body with their load up. And then when they do that, their trunk has to come back. I mean, it's just compensatory. And then if they're a right hand bowler and they look to jump off their left leg, of course, then the left leg comes out too far in front and then they're slowing
Hmm.
themselves down before them to jump. So they're losing precious ground speed that they've developed.
Yeah.
So now it's about get more compact. I don't care if you go to the shoulder here, you go a little bit higher, whatever. As long as it's sort of in line with the shoulder, and then
Hmm.
as long as you're not having to rock back so far, thanks to getting out really long here, then all of a sudden you can get through the crease really, really quick. It just makes sure that when you land on the back foot, that the back foot's landing under your hip and not so far in front of you. When you're slowing down enormously, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden that heel thing corrects itself. If people have got the
Hmm.
physical attribute of
And
stiffness,
that
yes, that'll be fine.
And that comes back to teaching the running mechanics. And this is where I found it links in so nicely, right? Because like in your running mechanics, if you're overstriding or, you've got some issues there, well, if we can teach you one, how to like dorsiflex your foot, how to access your midfoot, how to actually use your Achilles, all of a sudden, like, you know how to land under your hip. All of a sudden, you know how to run in.
Correct.
And you see people actually running in the way that they're almost going to hit these exact same movements when they hit back for contact. And like, I've been able to, in a roundabout way, teach them these sorts of things, but it makes the cueing so much easier now that, like, one, they know how to land with their foot underneath their hip because they're now dorsiflexing their foot. They're now, actively landing, say, forefoot pressure. A good cue that I found was just lift your
Mm,
toes off the ground. So you've still got your forefoot there, like you've still got
yeah.
the balls of your feet, but with your toes off the ground, like they can't plantar as much. They can't like force themselves to say come
Mm,
down like this. And that was a nice
mm,
one to kind of do. Another one was sort of teaching people that the ground's your friend. Like you store and release energy using the ground. If you're fighting it, you think about like plotting
mm.
your leg. Well, then you don't get any of that kind of nice store
Well,
and release.
that's a really interesting point
I
in
found that
itself. Like
helped.
I've been thinking about front leg techniques going around, and I'm not talking about the amount of knee bend here. You know, there's different classification systems out there, and I know you've spoken to Nathan Keeley about that. Um, that's not where I'm going with this. I'm going with those who actively love to swing their front leg down versus those who simply plonk the front leg on the ground, right? And do more of the stumble type reflex. You know, so you got some who are just, I'm just going to plonk the leg, and I'm going to say at Archer is a great example of someone who doesn't appear as,
But you, like we talked about the hover versus the
yeah,
slam
that's
type
exactly
thing,
where I'm,
right? Cummins is kind of a
yeah,
slam type
that's
guy.
where I'm coming from
Joffre,
here, where
yeah,
I feel that the hover technique is more of a, look, I'm just going to keep the leg and plonk, and there's going to be a little bit of that initial wobble, and I'm going to catapult over. Whereas the getting a knee up high is more of that rotational slam, that sort of stuff. And what
yeah.
I've noticed, what I've been thinking about these two different techniques is one seems a lot more active than the other, and that's the slam. Whereas the plonk is and what
Slam,
it
yeah,
seems to do, you go back and have a look now. I'm sure you have. You look at the you look at the plonkers,
yeah. It
those with the hover technique. They create a massive C, an arc between the front arm and the front leg, and so
was like I used
a
to call it
K,
K.
yeah, let's go K, much better. And I
Same,
feel
same,
that
same.
these
Like,
guys utilize their front arm a lot better than the slammers. So I think I
mm,
feel the slammers of the front leg, they bring the they bring the front leg and front arm down
mm.
too close together. In that, by the time they've landed the front foot, the front arm is not doing much. And so, talking about going back to what Ponny was saying,
That and
yeah,
that's one of the ways
going
you,
what Ponny was saying, it's
yeah.
so you don't get any power in
It's
the air
an
with using your front arm while you're in the air. So wait until you've
no,
landed and then pull, and then you got so much more power from the ground.
yeah,
So be connected to the ground. I actually really like that saying you just had. You know, the ground is your friend, because it
mm,
actually is.
yeah,
That's where you can derive a lot of the force and rotational power and everything you need to bowl quick.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, something I've noticed with the plonkers is that they have a better K shape. Again, that's just one thing is
yeah.
the shape, but they've got more of a pull from the front arm to help bring the bowling arm through. Like you were saying before, I think that's so important. And I do see many bowlers who waste the front arm too early. I think in their bowling action.
Mm. I reckon what probably links into that nicely is like if you're more hovering and you're getting into that K position, like one during their jump, you'll see them more
Mm.
switch their legs. So like they'll just sort of get that front leg out, but they won't get it as high because they don't need to. So it's less distance for that front leg to travel, and because the arm's up in the same spot as if you had someone with the front knee up high, it's quicker to get that front knee
Yeah,
down, I think,
and
which probably means you can sort of stumble over it and get some
I'm going to
good
call that
speed. But
separation. You know, in a different sense. We're not talking
yeah,
about the X factor. Yeah, we're
yeah,
talking
all
about
the
that
way up here.
separation now.
Yeah, but
Front,
mm,
front arm, front leg separation. I think that's important and healthy to create
yeah.
extra tension,
Mm.
pace on the ball.
Get those obliques
Yeah,
like on stretch that they can snap down
100%.
together. And I love that this is where you can bring things
Mm,
full circle, like, we're linking running mechanics, you're linking functional anatomy, into things of say technique that now people can kind of understand. Like when you stretch a muscle, like
mm.
especially towards end range, a muscle can't hold at end range.
Yeah,
It'll snap back, and I mean, and that's where you can sort of leverage certain things to go, well, I often wonder if say guys that kind of can sort of access that kind of rotation, like you might see this in a bit of counter rotation when like as they get to like back foot contact, yeah, they're kind of side on, but who knows, does a bit more front on. They might almost go out a bit to
mm,
then snap back, right? We talked
mm,
about throwing the arm out. When you do that, you're going to
mm.
rotate back a bit, and then that can almost be like a little slingshot to kind of like get back, like back and then
Yeah, I
going
find I
forwards.
do find that
There could
bowlers
be
who
something
counter
in there
rotate
where
get themselves in a bit of a problem, and I've seen with kids, even young adults, etc., doing it. Is that the counter? Yeah, the counter.
I probably
Oh well, the
shouldn't use the
term's a
term counter
legitimate term.
rotation. I mean,
It is a
I know, but I more mean like kind of
yeah.
getting that to
I
kind of
think
work.
I
How he
mean
sort
I
of talks
do a
about it
lot of the
now.
coaching of the exactly what you hit before about the gather, and you've put posts up about James Anderson that sort of stuff about the turning and that. I do a lot of that with bowlers who are semi-open and side on or ultra side on.
Mm.
Um, and it really
With their
it
skills,
really
yeah,
works because what it does, you're sorting that out now. You get him to rotate
yeah,
away, and then what happens is that again the obliques will pull on the pelvis to rotate you into position. And so when they land on the back foot, they
mm.
normally 99% of the time I've found in really good alignment now, and they don't have to worry about, oh, yeah, hang on, where do I have to move
Yeah.
now? Back foot. It's too late. You've landed. So why not get that sorted
Mm,
in your gather?
yeah.
And so that works. And then they come
Yeah.
out of the position. They're not finding themselves having to counter rotate and then back in the ground again. That's
Yeah.
like all over the place, and
Yeah.
they get into all sorts of knots. So just start. If you're going to be side on, start
Mm,
side on, and come out of it. It's just that obviously we want the pelvis to come through first
yeah.
and allow the shoulders to lag later and get that whip. It's just you're still coming out of it.
Which is it's tough. Like if you think about the two, I mean, if we use those two kind of main frameworks, you're more front on or you're more side on, like both of you are going to get yourselves into like at takeoff. That's when you're still going to have, the pelvis going straight, the upper body coming out. Now, if you're front on, you don't need to move the lower body in the air. You just want to get to your back foot contact as quick as you can. So guys that are more front on but have too much time in the air, they just
Yeah,
end up bringing themselves back. Now that's kind of easier. Like if you can delay this coming through, the lower body just stays straight, then you create your hip shoulder separation and access that powerful rotation by you doing this, up body out. Now, if you're more side on, you not only have to bring the upper body out, but now you've got to bring the lower body out and then bring the lower body in first to
yeah,
now create the lag between the upper body, which is a lot more challenging to do. And that's why, like, I come back to relaxation. Like, you can't do it if you're not relaxed. Like, you look at Akhtar, he was a great one. Like, I remember watching him bowl, and you could see how relaxed he was. 'Cause I remember him doing this, like this hand just like
yeah,
this as he come in, do like that. How relaxed do you have to be in your like action that you're literally flapping the ball around
yeah,
before you kind of do it? And I just thought, if you want to be side on, it's harder to
yeah.
bring the lower body in first. I mean, I think, Stefan and stuff talk about, sorry, Pont talk about the pre-turn. Like, you better make sure you can land on the outside edge of your foot. Otherwise, that ankle is
Pre-turn
not
is
going to be able to
certainly
pre-turn.
valid.
If you land too much
Yeah,
on the
pre-turn is
inside, it'll
certainly a
collapse.
valid thing, but
Yeah.
it's something that bowlers aren't really thinking about. So it's something that should just happen for you if you land
Oh, no.
in sort of a better position on that forefoot, midfoot, or back foot landing, then you give yourself every chance of pivoting and rotating.
Sort of the outside
What we've
edge,
known,
I
what
found.
we've learned from javelin research is that if you can extend your lumbar spine more, you're able to increase the angular
Mm,
distance of your throw. So, so in terms of the arm coming over, comes over great angular
yeah.
distance. And so, but what we also know, or what I've seen anyway, for those who can extend their lumbar spine, they can also get their
Mm,
pelvis to come through whilst creating that lag, uh, keeping the chest side on, thanks to that
yeah.
lumbar extension. So there's something for you as well. And so having some, and you see that in javelin a lot, don't you? I mean, like they're rocking back, and then that allows them to swing through like this. So you need that back extension. That's why
Yeah. It's such a,
the back is unfortunately one of the reasons why it's experiencing a lot of stress. It's tested in all different planes of motion,
mm,
um, and so yeah, that seems to work for a side-on bowler. And yeah, you can try and drill separation and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it comes
mm,
back to delaying the bowling arm helps you get that separation, and helps with. Um, and so the other thing is
yeah.
about delay. Throughout this conversation, I just had a realization there's another way to create delay that I haven't even thought of before. This is the magic of conversation.
Mm,
But we're talking about the plonkers, those who get into the K position with the front arm and the front leg. Well, I think one excellent way of delaying the bowling arm is to
yeah.
be a plonker. I can plonk because
Plonk
your
and
leg
bowl.
literally hits the ground pretty early. You don't get necessarily
Yeah.
a huge stride in because you haven't got the leg up really, really high to start with. But theoretically, it makes sense. You're probably more likely to have greater delay if you're not holding the ball in your gather for longer and using other methods like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got another secret with that, which I got this one off Phelps. So I'm having a podcast with him tomorrow, and I hope I'm not revealing too many of his secrets. But like when you start your delivery sequence, it's that say the point of frontal contact. So it's almost like I got one,
Mm,
two, three, four limbs, and it's kind of going to go well. It's hard to see me screen, but like if I'm like a
mm,
star position type thing, the front leg's going to come down first, then the front arm, then the
mm,
bowling arm, and then the rear leg.
mm,
In a general kind of sense. So if I can
mm,
have something pause
mm,
or hold something for longer, it'll then delay the rest of the sequences. So he was sort of saying like you can hold your front arm for longer,
mm,
then you delay the rest, right? You delay um, say the bowling arm coming through, you delay trunk flexion because if it's up here for
Yeah,
longer, you're still going to be
that's
more
right.
upright. So then you're delaying all that, which then if you can sort of access a bit more,
Mm.
it kind of works through quite nicely. Now it's a difficult thing to kind of do, but it's a relatively easy thing to sort of cue. So provided guys are getting into some good positions, like that's a nice one to go. All right, this is where we can go. This might be your cue now that you're jumping well, which means you're getting into a good position at back for contact where you haven't fucked yourself up by opening up too early. Now, if you can hold that for a bit longer, it'll delay the rest of the
Yeah,
sequence.
so I think on that, 100%, I really like that thinking. The front arm is almost like a catalyst for the rest. As soon as your front arm goes, I feel like
Mm,
your bowling arm wants to go because they do work together really well, and so does your trunk, right? So
yeah. Oh, and you see guys like they move them together, and then they're like here at
yeah,
say frontal contact,
in
and they
big
got nowhere else
trouble,
to
right?
go because
Yeah,
they
normally it
can't
doesn't
separate
result in
them.
faster bowling. Um,
Yeah.
so the front arm is really important. I think there's two things on that. Um, you can delay when you decide to throw the arm up. Um, and then secondly, you can buy yourself more time by
Mm,
getting the arm taller. So, and for a side-on bowler or a
mm,
semi-open bowler, you'd obviously want to get the front arm across a bit more, and that helps them keep them closed off. Absolutely, and look through the window if possible, if that works for a side-on bowl, which
mm,
most of the time it does. And then it's the arc of the front
mm,
arm. So for me, obviously, I still teach the karate chop method. I really like that. Knee and pont, grab the helmet
mm.
of the batsman, pull it towards you, that sort of stuff. But it's grabbing it that way for a side on bowler, and I'll do it this way so you can see. But grabbing it like that, it still keeps my chest closed off. But if I started up here and I threw down like wide like that, I'm prematurely opening up. My front foot hasn't even landed yet, and now my bowling arm wants to rush over, which is the problem you just mentioned before. Um,
Mm.
these bowlers seem to be in a
Yeah.
hurry to want to bowl the ball. Like they think their thinking's quite paradoxical
Yeah.
to how fast bowling is actually done, right? And I'm guilty of this a as a
Yeah.
wannabe fast bowler that I go, well, fuck, I wanted to try and bring that arm over as quick as I can. No, no, no. You've got to let everything do its job
Mm,
first, and that's just timing. So it's that
yeah.
delay stuff. But I find there's a lot of yeah, I can see when I mention the word delay to a bowler, I know exactly they're like, what the hell are you talking about? But I give a really good example of throwing a ball, and if you want to throw the ball for distance, the maximum
Mm,
distance or maximal velocity, we know that we typically start side on and we finish front on to the target, but we allow that arm to
yeah.
lag back and allow our trunk and pelvis to rotate and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We don't simply, I'm just going to push the ball like that and leave everything side on, And I demonstrate that, and they
Mm,
all laugh. But I'm like, that's the point I'm trying to make here. You're trying to bring this arm over
yeah.
way too early, and that's what I
Yeah.
mean. We need to have some delay here. So I still
Yeah.
use the ball as a passenger thing, and it resonates with some people.
Mm,
Um, and but yeah,
yeah.
I've got I'm looking for more natural ways to create delay rather than having again more thoughts. So one is having more of a pause in the gather. Yeah,
That's why I like
relaxation.
relaxation.
Relaxation plays a huge role in creating delay. I've noticed that with bowlers. If they just learn to have a dead
Mm,
arm, that gives them heaps of width.
mm. Yeah. That's been one of the ways that I've sort of gone about kind of doing it. But then I was sort of linking in, like, you touched on coaching the front arm, and I've sort of stopped coaching the front arm or
Yep.
say these kinds of things together. What I sort of looked at doing was, I'm going to teach you how it should work. You've got the front arm which is connected to say, your front side, and I use the whole front side, bowling side to kind of visualize it. And I was like, well, if you want to use your upper body and use that rotation to its best ability, then you've got the front arm, you've got the bowling arm, you've got the front side, you've got the bowling side. You want to get yourself out there and use that together. So now we're linking both sides together. The front side is going to snap the bowling side through,
Yeah.
and your bowling arm's going to come in there. So giving them a chance to do this against the side net, and then say, well, look, now try and bowl as fast as you can. Let's see how you go about trying to self-organize using your upper body
Mm.
the way that it's supposed to be used. And then you start to see people they might do a little bit differently, and then I might give them some feedback if you sort of need. But it was kind of, because I had a similar thought. How can I kind of coach it without um, putting too much technical thought into it? And I thought, well, if I give you an
Mm.
understanding, or if I give you the tools, let's see how you do. And then, before you talked about doing the wrong thing. well, now do the wrong thing. You see how crappy
Yeah,
that feels?
yeah,
Now do it that way and see if you can find a way to go,
yep.
it'll
Exacerbate
work
the
now.
bad stuff,
Mm,
and they soon realize, well, I don't. They
mm,
just don't want to go back to that, which is this is all part of it too. So without
yeah,
heading the conversation,
yeah.
yeah, the
Don't
conversation
make me
is
go
now
back.
changing direction, but going into that whole buy-in side of things. So they might come for an analysis and get all the information, but then
Mm,
they can potentially walk away and go, well, I've got the information, but am I really going to make the change, or am I just happy doing what I'm normally doing?
mm,
Now, for us as coaches, we obviously want them to make the change,
yeah,
and we've gone to all this effort to give them an in-depth analysis, to
yeah,
give them the work they need to do, and all that sort of stuff. But what great way to show
mm,
cause or show evidence that, hey, if you can fix this stuff, look at the difference already. Look at, there's 5, 10K sitting right there for the taking.
mm,
And bowlers will, you talk performance like that,
yeah,
they will take it with both hands. They won't go home and not practice. Um, so I
mm,
find that's a really good tool. It's just
yeah,
something random I've done recently, and I've found it creates a really good amount of buy-in without me having to preach, and just say, look, this should work. You should feel stronger. You should feel like
yeah.
this when you do it. And oh my god! But one thing I notice when bowlers are getting all this technical work, feeling really good for them. Same thing is they'll have, like, no different to your sessions we did,
Mm,
our sessions early days, is that they'll have that magical ball that they produce, that feels faster than anything. It's like everything clicked, the right timing. You got to make sure your
mm,
camera's on,
yeah.
and that's why, what I do now is I have the camera rolling. Yeah,
That's
make
what a
sure you got
full
your camera
track
rolling
spinning
the
is
whole
for.
session, and you can always just edit later. In fact, I've now just got a battery pack I connect to the
Yeah,
iPad just in case so it doesn't go flat. If I'm out there all day, mate, we got to
nice.
have these things going. You can't afford to
Mm,
miss a ball, because if you can come back and analyze that ball,
yeah,
and go, what made that ball,
yeah,
technically speaking, what made it better than the rest, then there in part lies some of your answer to them repeating that. Um, and
yeah,
yeah, so for me, I think the next step would be to have multiple iPads set up, cameras, whatever, synced up together. So you're not just relying on, or
yeah.
hoping that if you sync a ball from the rear view, and then from the side view, and then from
Mm.
front view, they're all three separate balls. Um, the timing might be all different on all three, and then you're trying to sync them up and do a comparison. Yeah.
Well, when I was doing the masterclasses in the Netherlands, that's when like I almost had to set all the cameras up to record at the same time, do a loud clap, time those things up. But I couldn't start the cameras. I had to keep them all going from that point. But, then if I could sync it up at the start, I knew it would all kind of work out. Because I did it once, where I had
Mm.
the rear camera going the whole session, but the side camera I kind of did here and there, and then trying to
It is a
sync it up was
nightmare.
an absolute nightmare. So
Yeah,
I
you need to
thought,
find an
nah,
easy
that's not
system.
going to work. But being able to obviously
Yep.
stop
So what I've
start them
looked
all
into,
together.
is, like I
When,
mentioned about the Bluetooth triggering system, and so I can get
mm,
a trigger system that pairs just with one iPad and won't allow any other pairing to occur. So that'd be handy. But that I have
mm,
three iPads running all on
yeah,
tripods with three different triggers, and I could go bang, 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 and they all start together more
amazing.
roundabout. And it's not hard for me to go into an app
Mm,
like OnForm or Coach Now or something like
yeah,
that, and and then sync up like that, because
yeah,
then you're getting that one ball from different angles rather than
mm,
three different balls, and then
yeah,
hoping that they're all linked up, right?
yeah,
And um, so yeah, and on that,
yeah,
it's real easy to analyze a bad ball. Anyone can do that. I think what we got to do is, I've been saying
mm,
this with athletes a lot recently. Yeah,
yeah. It's like telling
yeah.
people the flaw without a solution.
Any
It's
hack
like,
could
what,
tell
what are
you
you,
what
what are
was
you
going on,
doing?
right? But
Like,
I think for me, I have all my
oh,
best conversations with bowlers, and the most rewarding conversations when we talk about their strengths and looking to improve their strengths. So we identify that,
yeah,
hey, look how much faster you ran in this ball, and you bowled 5, 10 Ks quicker. Can you now see from the
mm,
data and from how you felt that just run up speed for you really helps? And it does
mm,
help for most bowlers. And they go, oh, of course. I mean, that's amazing. So
yeah,
why don't we just keep working on that? I mean, yeah, sure, we might hit a point where it's going to plateau out, but that conversation
yeah,
becomes more about,
absolutely.
shit, he's actually looking to build upon my strengths rather than just only all he sees through his glasses is weaknesses
Yeah,
everywhere, which is poor coaching. really. You've got to frame it in
Yeah,
a way that right now you're bowling, and I still do this.
100%.
I think I did it with you, right? I said, Stubbsy, you've got the potential to bowl 130 right now if you just
Mm,
cleaned up a couple of little things and added to this profile
mm,
that you have with your strengths. And the
mm,
conversation all of a sudden becomes different rather than, all right, you sit down with the bowler and you know this. This is all the things you're doing wrong. So they leave
yeah,
the session thinking they're wrong, that they're bowling the wrong way. I don't know how to play cricket, all that sort of stuff. It's we know
mm,
that's well, and we don't coach like we never really have, but I'm sure bowlers and cricketers have stumbled across
yeah,
coaching that's like that. That doesn't really work in with them and their strengths and what they present with. So um, yeah, so it's comes back to the going around the circle now, but going back to where we started the conversation around having a diary and making the notes around the things they think they're doing
mm,
well. And then if you can add some statistical stuff to it, which is pretty back end side of things that I was talking about, me running through the extra analyses and trying
yeah,
to figure out, statistically speaking, what links for them. Um, then all of a sudden, again,
mm,
you're getting a more coherent story there of that player rather than simply getting a whole bunch of guys and saying, right, front knee's important, run up speed's important, which is basically what research has done in fast bowling.
yeah,
So I just want to point out that, you know,
yeah.
that's how that's gone about. And there's been very little research done on case studies, individuals, and finding out what works for individuals. There's been one paper that I know of that's done an okay job at doing that. And we're trying to do a bit better than that. Like all our coaching is
It's tough
meant
though,
to be
isn't it?
individualized. So it makes sense that our coaching, and if we can bring in
Yeah,
some of that knowledge from research like we have, but to then try and find out how that bowler goes about doing it.
mm,
And yeah, so
yeah,
again, I mean, I'm only teaching, I'm only saying some of the things that I've been doing recently, but the probably got one more thing to add to the mix, and that is now my reports that I do for bowlers.
mm,
They're about 8 to 10 pages long, full of photos, and they're time synced photos and stuff. And I will show you an example at some point. But yeah, there's at the end, I'm now going to introduce a rating system based on the four um, factors that we know for most bowlers contribute to speed. So run up speed, front knee angle at release. Yeah.
I'll show you mine
Oh,
because
okay.
ours might
Yeah.
end up being
Isn't that
somewhat
hilarious?
similar. Like, where did I put it? Because funnily enough, like I'm sure you'd know. Like when I first started coaching, I took the form that you made me, and like that's sort of what I
Yep.
started with. But across the years, like I'm always looking for
Oh,
ways
mate,
that I
I
can
haven't used that form
you
for
might say sort of
since.
make it
I
better,
don't think I've used that
obviously.
form since I coached you.
Um, I know, right?
I mean, now I look back and I go, some
Yeah.
of that's pretty good,
So
but
I'm happy to say
mate,
that
I mean, shit, no.
share.
Yeah, things evolve big time.
Oh, since then it's gotten
Yeah.
better. So yeah, I mean here's Liam who wouldn't mind me sharing his, but I have an inquiry form that I want guys to kind of fill out, like all this sort of stuff here, like your goals, your expectations, what your role is, your best experience, your worst experience, and then basic skill stuff, so I can kind of get people thinking about even like your tactics. How do you take wickets or how do you read batsmen? What's your mindset like? And then some S&P history stuff, but like just to get a good background on who they are. I remember, do you remember Paul and Shiny's thing that they did at Loughborough? So I kind of used the scoring out of two, and I picked out some things that I coach on, and then gave them a score out of two that I thought this is where you can sort of improve, plus a Kino sequence. Similar here, this is where you can sort of improve. And then I kind of went a bit further and thought, maybe I can put a bit more explanation into some of these things so like they can sort of understand and also see like where we can sort of go from there. A bit like coaching plan discussion. These were some of the cues that we talked about. I also wanted to be able to say like what we can work in the future because I'm sure as you'd know, like what we do in that one session, like there's obviously more that we can do. So I want to make sure that we still kind of I can give you some greater context into life. Once we get this sort of done, we can sort of do this. And I really tried to write it in a way that it kind of everything flows nicely. Like, some of these things happening in delivery sequences because you run ups like this, and we work on these things, and then, he's since been given a program and plan, so to speak. But just like the whole visual representation. But I I had thought about making some of the photos a bit bigger because they have kind of pretty small there,
I
but
yeah.
I enjoyed trying to hopefully explain it as communicate it, like how can I communicate it or how can I use the visuals? I also screen record, some notes over their videos too and send that through. So I've got a video, I've got that visual plus some reading notes, plus I talk them through it. I thought I'm trying to hit them from as many ends as possible so that, they understand. It's clear to them now and they can sort of see like this is exactly where the coaching plan is going to address. This is how it's going to start to improve you, and this is sort of what we can sort of expect from it. So, I hope you're excited because,
Yeah. Well, yeah, but if your speed gun isn't set up right, and you use an ordinary speed gun, then unfortunately, how can you trust the data?
mm,
Um, so it's important that speed guns are calibrated, all that sort of stuff. It's not sexy conversation for sure, but if we're using this tool
mm,
to make inferences about improvements in performance, in techniques, or in physical training and all that sort of stuff, then it makes sense. Our measurement,
mm,
we need to be confident around our measurement of ball speed. And now there's more to bowling than just ball speed, of course, but you know, um,
yeah,
ball speed's pretty important for a really fast bowler. It's what they rely more upon than anything else. That's why they're called fast
mm,
bowlers. If they're going to be a slow, medium pace bowler, then sure, speed's not as important,
yep,
but then craft and accuracy and all that sort of consistency become
mm,
more important. But yeah, we need, if I'm coaching someone's speed, like we're
yep,
I'm more of an out and out a speed coach. You're more holistic than I am, which is awesome. I still have a bias towards
yeah,
speed development, and that's cool. But for me, I need to make sure my gun's spot on. So otherwise, how can I be confident in? And so I looked at getting cheaper
yep,
guns. I looked at Pocket Radar, for example. Like, wow, what's the difference? I mean, they can give you the same speed, but the fact is, I could
mm,
be. Here's the cool thing, mate. If we connect up with Frogbox, for example, get the stalker,
yeah,
get the speed sign sitting on the electronic
mm,
scoreboard. The, there's like 50 to 60 meters of wireless
cool,
range
huh?
between the stalker gun and the speed sign that I have. I could literally be
Yep.
sitting like behind the bowler with the speed gun, have the digital speed sign sitting up on the electronic scoreboard. Every time they bowl a ball,
Oh
the speed
gosh,
pops up on the scoreboard. Right? I mean, I've thought about doing this. Just
yep.
how fun would that be? And that's like you going to the MCG now and seeing your speeds on the
Oh,
screen.
you'd break
Like,
some hearts, like seriously, wouldn't you? Mate, how funny would it be if you rock up to the MCG and just start getting people's speeds up there as well?
yeah, when you think
Oh
about
gosh.
Frogbox
Yeah,
integration,
if I was a young kid, that'd be epic. Everyone wants to
everyone wants
know.
to know that. So here's the thing: if
Yeah.
you like a lot of clubs now doing Frogbox, and if you could
Yeah.
integrate speed in with the Frogbox recordings as
Mm,
well, and bat speeds, because that's the thing with the Stalker, you can get the speed off the ball as well. Um, then all of a sudden people are going to be like,
yeah.
wow. And then the newest
Mm,
Stalker gun can do revs. So for spinners, it'd be fascinating to know how valid that is, that measurement. I didn't buy that gun because I wasn't
really
sure about
cool.
the validity of the measurement of
Okay.
revs per second. But we know speed is solid. But think of
Gotcha.
spinners now. I think how good that would be to know how many revs you're putting on the ball. And
Mm,
I mean, that's the science part here that people are captivated in. Well, not everyone, but a lot of cricketers are
yeah.
interested in some of the numbers that they produce and might not have really thought about it in the past. But I know everybody loves being gunned.
Mm,
Everyone who's come down and had the gun on them is like, oh my god, I've always wondered what I could bowl.
yeah.
So Christ Stubbzy, even just having a talent day session or a speed hunt, a speed camp, or whatever you want to call it, where come down and see how
Yeah.
quick you can bowl. I mean, everyone would love to do that, wouldn't they? I mean,
Mm.
I was a kid, I would have jumped at every chance.
Yeah, I mean that's I thought about something like that for the
Mm,
workshop, It's a profiling workshop. Like we've got enough gear to test a bunch of different metrics, like speed's just one of the things, and then we can, also give you a keynote sequence as well to kind of like go along with it. But wouldn't that be super cool?
yeah.
Like I mean that's the workshop that I thought would be worthwhile doing. And then I sort of think how you can add extra value into it. Teaching people a foundation of running mechanics, teaching people some mental skills, a bit of stuff about craft and tactics and stuff like that. And when you mentioned the frog box before, like I've got that, rigged up Google Sheet, they could go back through and based on their Frogbox stuff, they could code their game. I've also got a statistical analysis type
Mm,
thing. So you know how like when you get your figures, like your figures don't tell the whole story.
mm,
And if I really want to be, I guess if I want to be if I want to analyze a bowler's stats, I need to know the roles or the scenarios they were bowling in. Like if you take 3 for 50, but you got no wickets at the start, no wickets in the middle, and you took three cheap ones at the end, your impact hasn't been as much. But if you get hit for I don't know, like 2 for 60, but you got those two wickets at the start, even though you went for a little bit, but that then helped later in the game for the rest of the
mm.
team to do well. Like I want to know how your new ball bowling is. I want to know what you're like in the middle overs. I know what you're like at the death, and differentiating that is another layer on. I say I mean you could code the balls. Now you've got the skill execution. You can also code I guess, we can differentiate your stats a bit more. And so we can see what roles you're struggling with. Why are you not doing well at the death? Well, if you look at the frog box and you've coded your stuff, when you try to bowl your Yorkers, you're bowling them too short, which means now they're half volleys. So we need to teach you that when you bowl a Yorker, miss
Yeah,
fuller. It's safer. Better to bowl a low full toss than bowl a half volley. And now we can sort
you're
of, I
heading.
mean, maybe, I mean, I did sort of sit back and go, at what point is this
Well,
data?
there's a couple of things here.
Yeah, like what point
Yeah,
is this,
the performance analysis is where it's at. I mean, that what you're describing there is out and out performance analysis. It's knowledge of results, giving that information back.
Hmm.
You could even talk to the bowler before you give that
Yeah.
information, and find and seek out whether what they think. How'd you go land
Yeah.
Yorkers today or whatever, and they might tell you something that's different to what your data has.
Hmm.
They thought they were acceptable
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. The execution percentage was higher or whatever. Fine, but the
Hmm.
data doesn't lie too much, and it doesn't tell you everything. Sure, and the
Yeah.
thing with all this is that the bowler has an intention behind their line and length and the type of delivery they're going to bowl. Absolutely, but that can be changed on its head a little bit when you've got a batsman who's moving
Yeah.
around and causing all sorts of havoc out there in the middle.
Hmm.
Now, the batsman's trying to upset the rhythm of the bowler, and you've got the bowler who's trying to upset the rhythm of the batsman. It's just the game of cat and mouse going on. But yeah, performance analysis is really, really
Hmm.
useful. And to create a profile of each bowler, I think's where it has to go. And then, I mean, I don't do that per se with
Yeah.
my bowlers on a whole holistic front, but I mean, starting to introduce profiling was basically from the conversations I've had with a research student of mine on profiling speeds with weighted implements in order to try and determine
Yeah.
which ball weights seem to be better for training purposes to get a better training stimulus. So, in terms of improving ball speed. So, what we
Hmm.
found in a preliminary study, and actually it was one you partook in many years ago, was what we did. We started going back through all the balls
Hmm.
that bowlers were bowling with the weighted implements in the warm up and trying to track what speeds they were producing at various levels of perceived effort. So, how we told you, mate, can you bowl 15 warm up
Yeah.
balls? They're all at certain different levels of effort. We control for the effort at the end in the analysis. So, we know
Hmm.
that the ball speeds are um, relatively consistent, irrespective of effort level. But anyway, what we found out is something really unique is that there's some bowlers who seem to bowl faster with a lighter ball, and those who seem to bowl fast with a heavy ball in training, um, and some who do the opposite. And it's like, okay, so it seems like everyone's got certain strength power profiles,
Hmm.
and from a profiling sense, that's the only thing I'm doing at the moment. But I've just bought a whole heap of weighted balls, and I'm going to start doing a bit more profiling on this because I'm seeing a little bit of a trend here. I'm seeing a lot of kids who bowl much better with a lighter ball because they're so used to bowling with a tennis ball.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing some adults who are much better bowling with a heavy ball um,
Hmm.
because they're probably stronger, but they're missing some of the velocity, the acceleration side of things that maybe a lighter ball could offer. Um, yeah, so starting to use that now in
Yeah.
training, and I'm now no longer just bowling with a. I'm now no longer getting my bowlers to bowl with a normal ball only, normal weight ball. So we just mix it up every time. Just trying to get a whole
Yeah.
spectrum of just for now, because I haven't started the profiling process just yet. But I think there's something to that as well. But that all comes down to performance analysis, Stubbsy, which is
Mm.
exactly what you've been doing on a holistic level, which I think is brilliant. And people, I
Mm.
mean, companies pay a lot of money for data.
Yeah.
You think about um, millions of dollars that look, in every game, mate,
Mm.
there's someone collecting data on that, on ball flight trajectories, on outcome of every delivery. Right?
Yeah.
I've seen samples of this sort of data, and
Yeah.
people getting their hands on it, paying lots of money for it, because they want to uncover things that they don't know about a player. You don't know what you don't know, and then collecting all this data and hopefully
Mm.
use an inductive approach to learning and
Yeah.
science, that you can go, well, geez, I wonder what this data can tell me. It's quite different to the traditional scientific approach, which is that you have a
Mm.
hypothesis and then you go out and get the data you want and so on. This is big data science now, where you're getting so much data, you don't know what
Yeah.
it's going to tell you just yet, and then you throw it to a few performance analysts or yourself,
Mm.
and you are going to sift through it and see what it can tell you. And that's going into it without a question, which is a completely different approach and a completely valid
Yeah.
approach. But there's a lot to take away from it, and then of course how you relay that back onto the bowler. And for me, Excel's a really good piece of
Mm.
software. You can do some amazing things with it without being too old school. But Google
Yeah.
Sheets, you
Google
can
Sheets.
do
Like,
all sorts of charts and pivot tables and stuff of profiling your player
mm.
and how they compare to other people in the group. But is it really about other people?
Yeah.
I think unless you, the only time I
Mm.
talk about that is how
No.
you how your strengths complement other people's weaknesses in your team. Um, if someone comes to me and they're this, I think
That
that's the
team
only time when I'll
dynamic. That's
bring that
good.
up. I
Yeah.
think and if I've got an out and out fast bowler coming to me, that they're
Mm.
probably picked because of their ability to bowl really quick. And there's probably no doubt the workhorses in the team who can settle into a line and length all
Yeah.
day long and get the ball to nip away or do something like that. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, you don't have to
Mm.
have all the skill sets. I mean, it'll be great, but if you're in the team to be really fast, then let's stick to
Yeah.
your strengths. And yeah, if you can build up some repertoire, like some craft in the background, sure, go for it. But it comes
Yeah.
back to a self identity, Stubbsy. So I think I've now
Mm.
started capturing. I did this years ago, and I went off the bandwagon for a little bit, and I didn't do it. But I've just started going back to it, which was trying to understand what
Mm.
the identity of the self identity of a bowler, like how they identify themselves. You know, what what
Yeah.
who are you in as a bowler
Yeah.
or as a cricketer, whatever. What is it that you want to
Mm.
be? Some people don't want to be express, and so I had a guy the other day
Mm.
who's 40 years old.
No.
He says, I don't care about speed. I just want to be able to bowl six balls in one spot. And I said, absolutely, no worries. Okay. But if I didn't ask the question,
Yeah.
all of a sudden we're going off coaching speed and doing all this stuff. And again,
Mm.
missing the picture here. So, yeah, for him, he identifies with himself that being a better bowler would
Yeah.
be to have the accuracy.
And
Yeah.
like things won't.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that's fair. Like, if you're coaching, yeah, I'm putting together like an overall philosophy framework. I remember, I had the four pillars up the top, but that wasn't like the foundational thing. Like down the bottom, you've got like, you know, that individual, who that person is, mind, body, and soul, you know, and your coaching method needs to obviously appreciate that, especially when you bring it into your like coach to athlete relationship. So I built down the bottom of you might say, philosophical triangle. Mind, body, and soul is at the bottom. You want to respect that. The coach to athlete relationship then creates a learning environment. Then you've got the, different kinds of factors that go into that, like social and cultural and etc. Then you've got, say, the four pillars. Like you do those four pillars inside the learning environment, which is communicated through that coach to athlete relationship. Like if you're trying to coach an athlete to be someone that they don't want to be or they don't identify with, give the best fucking whiz bang methods in the world. It ain't gonna do jack shit because like they aren't gonna identify with it. And I often find as well, like, I mean, you know me, I love talking about psychology and I love talking about happiness or
Mm.
life. I'll link anything back to life. But I definitely take a lot of fulfillment out of like cricket's been or fast bowling's been the vehicle that has allowed me to impact people's lives. And I always try to go beyond just I don't want to make you just a better cricketer. Like if I can assist you in being a better person, that'll make you a better cricketer. Hell, if you're more comfortable in yourself, like I remember having this conversation about professionalism. Professionalism isn't this stereotypical image that people come up with. In my opinion, it's like when you respect yourself, when I respect you, and I just be who I am. If I can just be as unapologetically myself as possible, then I then create space for you to do the same. So if we can both be ourselves together, we're going to come together in a much stronger relationship and like strategy to be able to get some good methods out. And if I can make you feel more secure in yourself, I guarantee you'll handle pressure better. I guarantee you'll focus better. I guarantee that when we're working on motor control, you won't get as frustrated, which then fucks your ability to do any kind of motor control. You'll be able to stay focused and work through the challenges because of like who you are as a person now, being more secure, now being more aligned with the person you want to be. And I love how all this sort of stuff comes full circle. And it's why I enjoyed working, being a holistic kind of coach, like because I thought I don't really want to be the kind of coach who's going, if you come to me and you want to be a better fast bowler, I'll make you a better fast bowler by just improving technique. Because it's this like secondary kind of avenue where like I'll improve your technique to make you a better fast bowler. I sort of thought like to make you a better fast bowler, I need to improve everything.
Mm.
Like let's get to work on everything.
Yep,
But
100%
I had
agree.
time to do that. Like traveling around the world. Like I haven't got 3 kids and a full-time job as a university lecturer.
No,
Not even talking
no,
about how
that's
much
right.
research you've got to do.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what I think I've
that's
got any
that's
kids.
there's no, no, that's funny. No, that there's so much value to creating a supportive environment for your athletes. That
Yeah,
it's often one of the things that's oft talked about. No different to people come to see you, or they come down to have coaching down where I am. They always feel relaxed and feel like they can be themselves, and that takes a
yeah,
special person to bring that out in people. So that's full kudos to
yeah,
us, both of us, as great communicators and
mm,
people who are not really judgmental. We've been there,
nah,
mate. We've done all these things. But we're easy,
yeah.
and we create a relaxing
And
environment,
we can
which
take the
is
piss out of
we
ourselves.
can we can laugh at ourselves. We What it does though is it
Mm,
allows them to relax, and when we know when people can
mm,
relax, and they tend to train better, perform better, happier. Um, Literally
mm,
had people just come down for sessions like that, nothing else. That they might have had a bit of a
mm,
bad outing on the weekend, or copped a spray from a coach who a bit of an
mm,
old school autocratic method. And yeah, literally had a phone
yeah,
call, a couple of times. Just low on confidence and come down and just have a bowl with you.
mm,
And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like these
yeah,
conversations are now not technique. They're you can't pin yourself just to
yeah,
one thing and just think that you're just going to make someone a better cricketer
mm,
just by doing that one thing only. There's always,
yeah,
even though I specialize in technique, but I know darn well that that's a mistake not to
mm,
address the other components, or not to be at least aware of them. And so, I'll
yeah,
often ask a bowler, "What do you
mm,
are you over the S&C stuff? Are you going to someone, or do you need help with that? Or
mm,
I try not to step on toes. If someone else is doing it, that's cool. Do it. Just I want to make sure you got it covered because it's important for your development. Or
yeah.
if
It's
I
like
can't
I
do
can
it,
add value.
well, yeah, I'll just refer on to somebody who can do it. But just making
Yeah,
sure it's covered.
yeah.
Like Jim Rohn says, if you've got any weaknesses, get them covered. And I like that. Get them covered. And so,
How good is Jim Rohn? I love him.
yeah, yeah, get it
Yeah, get
covered.
him covered. Yeah,
And that's about
yeah,
identifying, going through with the bowler and realizing that they're a cricketer and then they're also a
mm,
person. And so, what's going on in life? And if you can't, like, this is one thing I've
yeah,
noticed with a lot of stuff I do is that when I've got bowlers
Mm.
coming in fortnightly, which I don't have a lot of, right? But I do. I've got a couple that are coming to me fortnightly now,
Yeah.
which is great, a great investment of their time. But I'm
Mm.
building a much more better connection with the guys, and you know this from your stuff because you follow more of that
Yeah.
method than I do. Um,
Mm.
you get to break down
Mm.
all these things and get to know them so much better that they can come to you and talk crap for a bit or talk about something that's going on in their
Mm.
life. And this is where you actually are
Yeah.
a good, well, the best perfect human ever because you just lend an ear to somebody can help be that person to, this is coach.
Yeah.
This is the actual benefit of being a coach first and foremost, rather than a
Mm.
fast bowling consultant or I'm just going to hang my hat on a technique
Yeah.
specialist or something like that. I mean, that's
Bit of a
just so,
fancy word.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Okay, you're just
Yeah.
honestly, you're just a person who's here to share some knowledge and experience and to
Yeah.
take this other person, hopefully, to a much happier place. And
Yeah.
that's at the end of the day what it all
I wrote
is.
down in my email signature. Oh, we've got that lag now, but I wrote down in my email signature. I didn't put fast bowling coach, which I used to have, or specialist or technician or guru or something like that. I just said coaching all things fast bowling. In brackets all things. And I thought, like I don't need to label or define myself as anything like
I feel it
I
can
don't know. Like
actually set
sometimes
you up for
people can sort of get
failure.
carried away with like
Yeah. So my wife and I
yeah.
went out for dinner the other night, and anyway, I'm sitting there saying that I don't know if I really like putting my title doctor on things anymore. I think it really. So I've had people that I've
Mm,
said. So I've said this to that people have cottoned on that I've got a doctorate, right? And they say, "Oh, you
yeah.
must be smart." And
Yeah.
what it does straight away is makes me feel like I need to be smart, and I'm not. I just
Right.
honestly, my students laugh their heads off when I say to them, "Look, I have to read something 3 times over before I understand it." And
Right.
they go, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, I just been doing this for a long."
God, I can't imagine like how challenging it is when you and the missus have like a little fight.
So what I've started doing, Stubbs, is I've taken my title off. I like a lot of things
Yeah.
now, and I'm going back to just
Okay.
being it's me. It's
Mm,
Simon. It's not. And what it does is breaks down
mm,
this barrier. Like because I was thinking that early days I've just got the
mm.
doctorate. Oh, why not use it? It's a good thing for image. But what it does is sets you up to be
Yeah.
almost someone that you might not be, and it's very easy to fall under. Hey, I remember going on a flight to New
Mm,
Zealand, and this is a funny story. It was quite embarrassing. Um, so going with the family, going to
mm,
go to a conference in New Zealand, but plane was delayed. We ended up getting on the plane, about to take off, and someone about 3 rows in front of me passes out, falls onto the ground. All right,
mm.
I got that stage two
Right.
kids, my wife, we're all sitting together, and we're like, holy shit. First thing came over
Mm,
the announcement. Anyone here a doctor? And I thought, oh, should I stand up? I'm not
mm.
really a doctor. Like, I'm not a GP. Anyway, they've come over to me because they knew I was signed in. My actual boarding ticket was doctor. And they came up.
Oh,
This is
right.
embarrassing as fuck. And they got this guy on the
Interesting.
floor and they've come over to me to see if I could help. And so I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm not a GP. I've got a PhD. And
Mm,
so anyway, the guy was fine. He was
yeah.
taken off the plane and all that sort of stuff in the end. But after, my wife actually brought that up, and I
Yeah.
forgot about that incident. We're having dinner, and she's like, "Remember that time when that happened?" I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, fuck this. I'm going to get rid of this thing, this burden, this feeling of like I'm just a normal person. I've just happened to
Yeah.
study this stuff, and that's a reward for it, but
Mm,
doesn't mean that I'm any better or any less than anyone else. Like it's not, and I don't ever want to feel like people might feel that
yeah.
way. Like so, knock down the barriers, and all of a sudden, look,
Yeah.
people don't want to know how much you know. They just want to know that you care. And
Mm,
100% first and foremost. That was one of my first lessons I learned as an S&C coach, actually, about 10 years ago, going to a conference, hearing
mm.
the guys have been around the traps for a long time coaching. They always kept coming back to the soft skills, and they kept coming back to that one principle. It's not about what you know, mate.
Mm.
It's about if you care, um, first
Yeah.
and foremost. And yeah, I've thought that caring is what dominates a relationship, no matter if it's coaching, no matter if it's with your partner,
Mm.
friends, family. It's the caring side of things. And the more you seem to care, the more you get out of the relationship. And
Mm.
then any knowledge you have is supplementary.
Yeah.
You're not meant to be the keeper of all knowledge, and it'd be false for me to pretend that I am.
Yeah.
As a coach, I'm learning stuff all the time, and so are you. And so we're not the keepers of
Mm.
all knowledge. And what you hear from us is gold dust, and that. Oh, fuck off, mate. I mean, like I like to just think that we're
Yeah.
piecing stuff together, and trying to help navigate
Yeah.
people through their
Well
journey.
put.
Basically,
Mm.
that's all we're
Yeah.
good. We're facilitators of a
Yeah, definitely.
journey.
I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. So I think the
Mm.
philosophical degree I did has helped with understanding philosophy. I mean, we are a doc. I've got a doctorate
Mm.
of philosophy. Yeah, it's in fast bowling, but it is really thinking about thinking, and
Mm.
our place and helping people and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's much broader than just fast bowling, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I loved and
Mm.
something I actually never done, which is why I loved what you did, because you're doing a lot of stuff I never did, and I go,
Mm.
wow, I should have done that. And that was create your philosophy. You know, you spent that first YouTube video, or
Yeah.
one of the very first videos you did was on your philosophy as a coach. And I just thought, you know what, you've taken the time to think about
Mm.
your philosophy. A lot of people don't even think about a philosophy. That don't even aware about how they even coach. They're not even at that
Yeah, I've got it
level.
mapped out in Canva now. Mm.
Yeah, that you realize that
Yeah.
you're very aware of how you go about your business, and where you got a bowler coming to you, where they sit in
Mm.
that scheme, where they fit into that. What are they?
Yeah.
Oh, and there's just so many layers to this, but
Mm.
that I mean, people just have that awareness. Just oh God,
Mm.
it's a fascinating conversation, Stubbsy. But I think I mean, we've touched on so many things today. I think we need to catch up again,
Yeah,
and
we
before
really
I
have.
before I completely
We
lose my
always
mind.
do.
It's getting harder to concentrate. That's what I've noticed as this conversation's gone on. I'm starting to fizzle. No matter how much coffee I
Yeah.
have, I'm
I started noticing the eyes start to kind of drop a little
drop,
bit,
and
then
it's
like, oh,
just
okay, now I'm starting to
what
feel
am I
it.
going to
Yeah.
say? But no, it's
Yeah.
been highly enjoyable as
Yeah.
always, and I think what's really good is
Always.
is the information sharing. That'll never change. I don't
Mm.
have any secret. I don't profess to have any
No.
secrets. That's the thing. It's just can we pass this on and make the world a better place? I mean, for me, Stubbsy. I mean, I'm sure you're the same. We're both very ambitious people.
Mm.
That we have so many things on our agenda
Yeah.
that we want to produce the next document, the next thing, and so on. My agenda is huge. I mean, but for me, the biggest
Yeah.
sin I think I can. But if I leave this planet
Mm.
tomorrow, whatever happens, is for me to leave all my shit on my computer and not have shared it.
Mm.
So Les Brown,
It's a
Les,
good point. I have had that
okay,
thought, mate. Like notebooks of
the
just
the
stuff here and
stuff you
there.
leave behind that, and even your mind,
Yeah.
right? I'm Shane Warne, someone who I
Mm.
aspired from a cricketing mind. I went and thought, shit, this guy
Mm.
is like a fast bowler trapped inside a spin bowler's body, right? And so he took the mentality of a
Mm.
fast bowler and apply that to spin bowling. And he was so
Right.
aggressive in the way he thought about spin bowling. So if he got hit for six, he
Mm.
was actually okay with that. He was like, "I'm going to get you." Like it was so I can learn so
Yeah.
much off Shane Warne, but Shane Warne has taken some of it with him, unfortunately. But fortunately, he was out there and he was able to do masterclasses and all sorts of stuff and share his
Mm.
knowledge with the world, which was great. But I feel that we've got
Yeah.
so much we can share together, individually, whatever, that it's a sin. Dare
Yeah.
I call it a sin? But to take it
Mm.
with see you
It
too
is
great
though.
without.
Like you're absolutely right.
And that's the counter to the start of this conversation, which was
And like I
yeah,
remember.
we know I was saying before at the very start about I'm not
Yeah.
putting everything out there. Now I'm starting to sound hypocritical, but this is actually
Mm.
that last part has now inspired me to get back out and posting and get back out and sharing information, because now I've got like what benefit am I serving if I'm just holding on to it? And
Brilliant.
there are no secrets. I mean, the stuff that we've
Mm.
learned, we've got from somewhere else. I mean, lot of the time we've taken other concepts and maybe jazzed them up
Mm.
or thought of it differently.
Yeah, that's well
Mm,
said. Yeah,
thanks. I mean,
like there's no reinventing the wheel, like most of my knowledge, you'd say. But it's so true. Like, the amount of people that we've learned from that have like inspired certain thoughts, and then from that, it's helped do this, or we might see something ourselves, and then we remember something that somebody else said. And the thing with secrets, like I always thought, like I'd rather give you all the secrets because like there's always more that I can give. It's not like I've
yeah,
got this bag and like once the bag's empty, there's nothing left.
yeah,
Like it's always going to have more than I can offer. And by
mm,
giving you what you want or like not hiding anything in, like hopefully I then become someone that you'll sort of continuously come back to, and then we can build on what you learned last time, build on what you learned last time until, hopefully it gets to a point where, you no longer say might need to continue learning, but now you can sort of almost start to refine what you know. And then that's the whole other process. You build up this huge knowledge base, and then you kind of refine it all back down into a coaching method, which requires 3 or 4 words, and then look, you've got a better fast bowler. Brilliant.
100%. Yeah, I love
Mm.
that thought. Just if you think you've given someone all of your knowledge, then you you mustn't have a lot. you, you know, it's, like so honestly, because there's
Yeah.
so much
Oh
to it, mate.
gosh.
The things
Yeah.
we've learnt and the things you see, there's so much to talk.
Yeah.
You could spend a whole 2 hours just on running
Mm.
mechanics, so you could do a whole day on it if you wanted to. To think that you've in 2 sessions with a bowler, think you've got
Really,
nothing
really
left to
good.
add. You're a fuckwit. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
clearly hit the point
Yeah.
in the conversation where I
Oh,
can't
it's
think of
so
any
true.
better words to use except swear words.
Yeah.
But this is
Yep.
no
I can
different to
leave
the
it
car.
there.
This is no different to
It
the
was an
car park.
absolute pleasure, as
Yeah. Oh
always.
yeah. I mean, we may as well hang on. I need to take a
Absolutely.
photo of the Deacon car park and then have it as my backdrop, just, just,
Yeah,
just
you
for old
do.
time's sake.
Yeah,
But you'll be.
that's
Are
right.
you planning on coming down and doing
Definitely.
having a catch up? We need to. What's the plan from here?
Yeah, I well, I wanted to get a bit better with my bowling because when I come down, I want to actually be
No,
able
you
to
want to beat me,
bowl
don't
well.
you?
So I'm playing 3 sessions this week, and but I wouldn't mind having a crack at beating what I got last time I was down there. And I think that it's funny, like when I first came down, and I've restarted a couple of times, I was barely bowling like over 105, 107. But these
Mm.
days, like with what I've learnt, like I've not bowled much lately. But first session was topping out at 111, second session 113. And now and this is me unfit and plus under bowled and probably under technically developed. So clearly, I've learnt enough that I'm starting at a higher level, and the cueing and the understanding for myself that I've been using, yeah, I am curious, but I think I'll definitely be coming down in probably 3 or 4 weeks or something, and we'll have to have a really good
Yeah, it
chat
sounds good.
and a good
I'm
bowl as
I'm
well.
away.
Set up both of our
Oh, mate,
guns or something like
I'm
that.
keen as. What we can even do is test, see if your gun's working all right as well. Compare both of our guns.
That'd be good,
Absolutely,
yeah.
and yeah, have a bowl.
Mm.
Yeah, and then look, no shame in like just even filming each other, just and just working through our own stuff together and just seeing
Oh, for
how
sure.
we're both looking because
Oh, mate, we'll be doing a
yeah, because
masterclass for sure.
I'd love to do that as well. I think
Yeah, that that'll be a
and
masterclass.
just role reversal. I mean,
Yeah.
like see what you think as well, because I mean, I have certain thoughts around
Mm.
my bowling action and yours, but when
Yeah.
we put them together, I mean, how good's that? But we can
Mm.
talk about that when the time comes.
Yeah.
If you, I'm around at that point, but I will be in Bali
Sounds good,
in end
mate.
of May, so early June I'll be in Bali. So yeah, I'll be away then. But like, yeah, come down whenever, mate. So
That's
cool. I
fine.
mean, it'd be so great to catch up and
Yeah, I fly out in
the start of
start of
June you
June,
fly it, do
so
you? Yeah, okay. And
mm,
you're going back, how long are you going back?
yeah, yeah, four
Yeah,
or five
okay.
months.
Nice.
I'll be back mid-October.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Great. Well,
Yeah. All right. Well,
that sounds good, mate. Well,
I'll keep you
yeah.
updated.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to catch up. And we'll talk again soon,
Yeah.
mate.